Didn't expect that, did you? The voice was cold and mocking. I felt the wind rushing past my ears as I fell. You really thought I'd help you reach level 10? I just wanted to see the look on your face when you failed right at the finish line. Now, Zhang Yongxing's laughter echoed in the air. I crashed into a sea of monsters. Sharp claws tore into my flesh. Fear, pain, and a burning sense of betrayal consumed me. I felt my life slipping away, fueled by a hatred so deep it stood more than the wounds. Then, I opened my eyes. I was standing in the plaza of North River Academy in Jiangxing City. My body was trembling. Cold sweat soaked my forehead. The memory of those monsters ripping me apart was still vivid, and that mocking laughter still rang in my ears. I looked around, my breath coming in short, ragged gasps. The familiar surroundings hit me like a physical blow. The school, the students, the atmosphere, it was all exactly as I remembered. I had been reborn. I was back 3 years in the past, standing at the very front of the line. It was the day of our awakening. On the stage, Principal Gao Baisong was giving the same speech I had heard once before. He talked about how we were all 18 now and that today was the biggest turning point of our lives. He wished us luck, whether we became combat classes, support classes, or even ordinary workers. He told us not to give up on ourselves. He spoke the exact same words, down to the last syllable. That's when I knew for sure. This wasn't a dream. I felt a surge of excitement. This world was a blend of reality and a game. Humans lived alongside monsters, and hidden dungeons filled with treasure were scattered everywhere. But in the last century, the monsters had grown stronger. Just recently, Sakura Country had been completely wiped off the map, its people turned into nothing but monster feed. The world was on edge. In my previous life, I was one of the stars of the academy. I had an S-grade talent. In this world, talent grades, from F to S, determined your ultimate potential. Everyone expected me to be a god. But I fell from grace the moment I awakened. I became a necromancer, a class so rare it hadn't been seen in a century. It sounded cool, but my starting stats were garbage, and I didn't even have a single innate skill. In a world where efficiency was everything, I couldn't even level up. People joked that the last necromancer was killed by a level 1 slime. I became the laughingstock of the city. I spent 3 years suffering, begging for scraps of experience from other teams, just to crawl my way to level 9. And then, Zhang Yongxing, my friend, invited me to a hunt. He pushed me into the horde just to watch me die. The hatred boiled in my blood. But in those final moments before I died, I had actually figured out the secret of the necromancer class. It wasn't a joke, it was a sleeping giant. Suddenly, a pillar of golden light shot into the sky from the center of the plaza. The awakening ceremony was starting. At that exact moment, my head buzzed. A virtual screen appeared before my eyes. Super system loading, binding successful. Current phase, primary. Feature activated, idle experience. My eyes widened. Usually, you only get a system interface after you successfully change classes. But this was different. This was something else entirely. Idle experience. Current accumulated XP is 0. Effect. Gain 1 point of experience every second. Collection. Experience can be extracted every day at midnight. Plus 1 XP. Plus 1 XP. I watched the counter tick up. My heart hammered against my ribs. 1 point every second? That was 86,400 points a day. I didn't have to fight. I didn't have to beg for teams. I could literally level up while lying in bed. I swallowed hard, my face a mask of shock. Su Ming, don't be nervous, Principal Gao said from nearby. He noticed my expression and thought I was just scared. With your S-grade talent, your future is limitless, no matter what class you get. I nodded, trying to hide my shaking hands. But then, a snide voice drifted from behind me. That's only if he actually gets a combat or support class. If our great genius ends up as a common laborer, we're all going to have a good laugh. I stiffened. I knew that voice. It was Zhang Yongxing. In my past life, he was right behind me in line, constantly whispering poison. The memory of him pushing me into the monsters flashed through my mind like a horror movie. I couldn't hold it back. I spun around and buried my fist in Zhang Yongxing's face. I didn't stop there. Before he could react, I delivered a brutal kick right between his legs. He couldn't even scream. He just collapsed, his face turning purple, curling up on the ground like a dried shrimp. I wanted to stomp on his head, but the instructors rushed over and pulled me back. The other students were whispering, staring at me in shock. Because of my high talent, the teachers didn't punish me immediately, they just kept us apart. I turned back around, ignoring the pain in my knuckles. I watched the system interface. Every time that number ticked up, it felt like a heartbeat. I had all the time in the world to settle the score with Zhang Yongxing later. Principal Gao cleared his throat, trying to move past the incident. He looked at me with a warning gaze, reminding me that Zhang Yongxing's family was powerful in the city and that he also had an A-grade talent. "All right," the principal announced, clapping his hands. "The formation is open. Everyone, get in your positions." The golden light grew blinding. It was time to change my fate. Principal Gao stepped forward to start the ceremony. He pulled out a long list and looked down at the sea of students. "Li Qingtian, step forward," he called out. Li Qingtian gulped, his face pale with nerves. He gritted his teeth and marched into the pillar of light. The golden glow flickered for a second, then went still. It was over in an instant. No sparks, no thunder, nothing. He walked out looking like he'd just lost his best friend. He had become a chef. It wasn't a bad job. He'd never starve, but it wasn't a combat class. Principal Gao didn't look surprised. The odds of becoming a warrior or a mage were only about 10%. Out of 500 students, we'd be lucky to get 50 fighters. "Wang Xiaohua, next," Gao shouted. A girl stepped up. She seemed calm, but the result was even worse. She became a massage therapist. The crowd erupted in whistles and jeers. Her face turned bright red as she fled the scene. It was a legitimate job, sure, but the jokes were already flying. "Hua Haitao." The crowd went silent. This guy was the other big name in our year. Like me, he had S-grade talent. He strutted toward the light, stopping right next to me. He gave me a look filled with pure contempt, trying to bait me into a reaction. I didn't even blink. I stared straight ahead, which clearly pissed him off. As soon as he stepped into the light, the sky began to churn. The golden pillar erupted into a blinding radiance. Principal Gao started shaking with excitement. Even I had to look away from my system interface to watch. He got it. A combat class. Hua Haitao walked out with his head held high, basking in the envious stares of everyone around him. "Good. Excellent," Gao shouted. He looked like he wanted to hug the guy. Hua Haitao walked past me and let out a loud, arrogant snort. He wanted me to know that he was number one now. I stayed calm. My experience points were ticking up every single second. My rise was inevitable. Finally, after dozens of names, Gao called mine. "Su Ming." Every eye in the square turned to me. I remembered this moment from my past life. Back then, this was the start of the nightmare. I took a deep breath and walked into the light. I wasn't afraid of the mockery this time. I was only afraid that I wouldn't get the class I needed. The moment my foot touched the light, the world changed. The sun vanished. The bright sky turned pitch black in an instant. The wind howled, and a massive, terrifying skull appeared in the clouds above us. The students gasped, frozen in fear. Principal Gao's eyes went wide. An omen this big usually meant a legendary or rare class. "It's a curse," Zhang Yongxing hissed from the sidelines, clutching his crotch in pain. "It's all show. He's going to be trash." The darkness faded, and the golden light returned. The ceremony was over. Combat profession, necromancer. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. I had done it. "Ha ha, a necromancer." Zhang Yongxing's laughter cut through the silence. "The most useless class in history. I told you it was all show." The crowd followed his lead. The square was filled with mockery and insults. Zhang Yongxing was laughing so hard there were tears in his eyes. Principal Gao sighed and shook his head. He looked devastated. To him, the necromancer was a legendary failure, a class so weak it was a joke. But I didn't care what they thought. I was looking at my stats. Name, Su Ming. Talent, S-grade. Profession, necromancer, unique. Level, 1. Experience, 0 out of 1,000. Strength, agility, spirit, physique, all 1. It looked pathetic. A normal person starts with 5 points in every stat. I had 1. But because my class was unique, I got extra attribute points every time I leveled up. And as long as I was alive, no one else in the world could ever be a necromancer. I had 6 free attribute points waiting. I dumped all of them into agility immediately. My agility jumped to 7. I felt my body become lighter, my reflexes sharpening. In this world, speed was everything. Strength was for damage, physique was for health, and spirit was for mana. But if they couldn't hit me, none of that mattered. I walked back to the group, feeling faster with every step. "Oh, look, the genius is back," Zhang Yongxing sneered, blocking my path. "Bet you didn't expect to become a joke, did you?" I looked him dead in the eye and felt a cold smile tugging at my lips. "Shut up, clown." Zhang Yongxing's face turned purple. He had already been beaten once today, and he couldn't believe I was still looking down on him. He gritted his teeth, but I just walked past him. He was a speck of dust in my rearview mirror. If the teachers and the principal hadn't been watching, Zhang Yongxing would have tried to make me kneel right then and there. Principal Gao Baisong called his name next. Zhang Yongxing glared at me, promising to show me who the real genius was, then marched toward the golden light with a cocky swagger. He didn't trigger any grand visions or celestial phenomena, but he got what he wanted. He awakened as a mage. He laughed all the way back, strutting past me to show off his success. I didn't say a word. I just looked at my hidden interface. I had 1,800 experience points saved up. I knew exactly how hard the road ahead would be for everyone else. In a level 1 dungeon, killing a monster only gave 5 points. To reach level 2, you had to kill 200 of them. Doing that solo was a nightmare, and splitting points in a team made it even slower. Suddenly, a sharp cracking sound echoed from the golden pillar. It sounded like ice shattering. The light froze solid, forming a massive, fractured ice pillar with a girl standing inside. She was breathtaking. Her silver hair caught the light, and her face was perfect. This was Yi Lingfei, the 3rd S-grade talent of the year. Her personality was just like her power, bitterly cold. In my past life, I never spoke a single word to her before I died. The announcement boomed across the field, "Ice Mage." The crowd went wild. Even Principal Gao was shaking with excitement. A rare class like that could freeze an entire city with one spell. Yi Lingfei walked out of the light, ignoring everyone. She didn't even glance at me. To her, I wasn't even worth noticing. "What are you looking at?" Zhang Yongxing barked, noticing my eyes on her. "A loser like you shouldn't even breathe in her direction." I didn't feel like playing nice anymore. "Shut up," I said coldly. He turned purple, his fists trembling. He couldn't believe a failure was talking back to him. He hissed at me to watch my back, but I just ignored him. The ceremony finished soon after. Out of 500 students, only 33 became fighters and 15 became supporters. The principal announced that these 48 students would head to their first dungeon trial tomorrow morning. As the crowd dispersed, someone slapped me hard on the shoulder. It was my best friend, Wang Xiaoming. He was a B-grade warrior. In my past life, he died during this very dungeon trial tomorrow. I never knew why because I had missed the event back then. He tried to comfort me, thinking I was depressed about my necromancer class. He promised to team up and carry me through the levels. I felt a pang of grief looking at him. I told him he should skip the trial tomorrow. He looked at me like I had lost my mind. I couldn't tell him he was going to die, so I just said I had a bad feeling. He laughed it off, and we parted ways at the crossroads. The sun set early that day. By 6 o'clock, the sky was already dark. I reached a dim alleyway on my way home and stopped. A girl was standing there in the shadows. She had a perfect silhouette and long, flowing hair. It was Shun Yao, the girl I used to chase after. We had been close, or so I thought. I walked toward her, a cold smile forming on my face. She opened her mouth to speak my name, but I didn't give her the chance. I swung my hand and slapped her across the face as hard as I could. "Bitch," I spat. Then I bolted. 4 men jumped out from the shadows immediately. In my past life, I was caught off guard here. I thought Shun Yao was waiting to comfort me, but she was just the bait for Zhang Yongxing's thugs. They had beaten me so badly I spent a month in the hospital. Not this time. My 7 points in agility made my body feel light and explosive. I dodged the 2 men blocking the exit with a quick burst of speed. They reached for me, but I was already gone, disappearing into the darkness before they could even realize I was out of reach. I ran out of the alley, heart racing, with only one thought in my mind. That felt amazing. I could still feel the sting on my palm from where I'd slapped Shun Yao. Behind me, I heard the lead thug cursing. He couldn't believe how fast I was. Xinyao was probably back there with tears in her eyes and 5 red finger marks on her face, seething with rage. She was used to me being her obedient little dog. She never expected me to bite back. But I didn't care about her anymore. I had more important things to deal with. I walked quickly and soon reached my front door. I unlocked it and pushed inside. The house was pitch black. I reached for the switch and flicked on the lights. My father, Su Chong, was sitting on the sofa, motionless. He was covered in stubble, his face gaunt and drained of energy. To anyone else, he looked like a ghost, but I was used to it. When he heard me enter, his lifeless eyes shifted toward me. He already knew I had awakened as a necromancer. To my surprise, he started to laugh. It was a hollow, desperate sound filled with helplessness. He was disappointed in me. I knew he had been through something terrible in a dungeon 5 years ago, the same one where my mother died. He had returned with broken strength, hidden injuries, and a shattered spirit, living like a walking corpse ever since. 5 years, I said, slamming the door hard. You won't say a word. What are you hiding? I was done. In my past life, I was a coward outside and a punching bag at home. Seeing him like this again made my blood boil. Huh. Su Chong stood up and kicked the table over. You're a trash class. What right do you have to talk to me like that? He used to be a proud berserker. That arrogance was still buried deep in his bones, and he wouldn't take that tone from his own son. I clenched my fists so hard my nails dug into my palms. I swore to myself right then that I would earn his respect. I would prove my class wasn't trash, and I would make him tell me every secret he was hiding. I knew the truth about necromancers now. With my system, I wouldn't live a pathetic life this time. Never again. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed through the house. Someone was kicking the door. Kid, open up. If you don't, I'm breaking this door down. I frowned. I didn't expect the thugs from the alley to find me so fast. How did they even get my address? Then it hit me. Xinyao. My face darkened. My system's experience points wouldn't be ready until midnight. Right now, I was still trash in terms of stats. Those guys outside were professional thugs with basic attributes much higher than mine. If they broke in, I didn't stand a chance. The door flew open with a final crash. 4 large men stormed into the small living room, making the space feel suffocating. Xinyao followed right behind them. Run again, kid. Go on. The leader sneered, swinging a club. You guys don't give up, do you? I backed up, my heart thumping. Orders are orders, the leader laughed. And we have your good friend here to thank for the directions. He glanced back at Xinyao. Friend? I don't know him, Xinyao said coldly. Zhang Yongxing is my friend. I'm just helping a friend out. She had made her choice. She was hitching her wagon to Zhang Yongxing because he was rich, powerful, and talented. To her, I was just a stepping stone she'd already stepped over. Oh, looks like there's another loser here. The leader noticed my father sitting on the sofa. Su Chong looked so disheveled they immediately dismissed him as a nobody. Deal with me. I stepped forward. Don't touch my dad. Even if he hadn't been much of a father lately, he was still my blood. I wasn't going to let them hurt him. My father's eyes flickered with a strange, complex emotion when he heard me defend him. Don't worry. The leader grinned evilly. There's enough for everyone. Get him. The 4 men lunged at me, clubs raised high. I braced for the impact, but it never came. Instead, I heard a series of heavy thuds. My eyes widened. Su Chong had moved like a flash, stepping in front of me. He used his frail-looking body to block every single blow. Dad, I shouted, touching a man's son right in front of him. Su Chong's voice was ice cold. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. How dare you? In that moment, his true aura exploded. His class information flashed before everyone's eyes. Berserker. The thugs froze. Even Shun Yao's mouth hung open. What the hell? The leader stammered. The trash kid has a rare combat class father? He dropped his club in terror and stumbled back. The other 3 didn't even wait. They turned and bolted out the door, terrified of being killed by a high-level berserker. Get out, Su Chong roared. The leader and Shun Yao scrambled over each other to get out of the house. Once they were gone, my father walked slowly to the door and shut it. As soon as the latch clicked, he doubled over and spat out a mouthful of bright red blood. Dad, I rushed to help him. Just revealing his power had caused him internal damage. His body was even weaker than I thought. "Get away," he growled, pushing me back. He was too proud to let me see him like this. He staggered toward his room and shut the door. Watching his retreating back, a heavy knot formed in my chest. The house fell silent again. I went to my room and lay on the bed, staring at my phone. The clock read 23:57. 3 minutes left. My heart hammered against my ribs. I had activated the system at 1 p.m. By midnight, I would have accumulated exactly 39,600 experience points. 23 hours, 59 minutes, and 58 seconds. 23 hours, 59 minutes, and 59 seconds. Midnight. Time was up. With trembling fingers, I summoned the system interface. It was time to stop being a loser. The counter on my screen displayed exactly 39,603 experience points. Without a second thought, I tapped the extract button. A notification flashed. Extraction successful. I swallowed hard, my throat dry from anticipation. I quickly summoned my attribute panel and locked my eyes onto the level column. My breath hitched. It worked. I was still level 1, but the experience bar showed 39,603/100. As long as I didn't manually trigger the level up, the experience would just keep stacking. This was crucial because experience wasn't just for leveling. It was the currency needed to upgrade skills later on. I looked at that number again. Nearly 40,000 points. In my previous life, it took me 3 years of grueling struggle to accumulate that much. I couldn't help it. I burst out laughing, the sound echoing in my small, dark room. I flopped back onto the bed, staring at the ceiling with a stupid grin on my face. Needless to say, I didn't sleep a wink that night. I chose not to level up immediately. Tomorrow was the trip to the novice dungeon, and if I suddenly showed up at a high level, it would raise too many questions I wasn't ready to answer. Morning light eventually spilled through the window, painting the room in a soft glow. I snapped my eyes open, feeling more energized than if I'd slept 10 hours. The novice dungeon was waiting. I scrambled out of bed, got ready, and headed out the door. Walking toward the academy, I felt a slight smirk tugging at my lips. I had waited a long time for this moment. I was going to shatter every pathetic, mocking opinion people had about necromancers. When I arrived at the school plaza, a crowd had already gathered. I scanned the faces, looking for my best friend, Wang Xiaoming. He wasn't there. I let out a long sigh of relief. He'd actually listened to my warning. He had always been good to me, and I truly didn't want to see him die in that dungeon. Well, if it isn't the great genius Su. A voice dripping with venom came from behind me. I turned to see Zhang Yongxing. Xin Yao was standing right next to him, her arm wrapped tightly around his. They looked sickeningly close. Zhang Yongxing knew I had pursued Xin Yao for a long time, and he was clearly trying to rub his victory in my face to get a reaction. He had no idea. In my heart, Xin Yao wasn't a prize, she was a plague. I felt nothing but disgust. I looked away immediately, not wanting to waste another second of my life looking at them. Zhang Yongxing took my silence for heartbreak. He let out a loud, triumphant laugh, thinking he'd wounded me. As the rest of the students filed in, our instructor, Gao Baisong, began the roll call. Only 47 people were present. Wang Xiaoming was the only one missing. Gao looked anxious, checking his watch repeatedly. This was a major event. Missing it was unheard of. After waiting 10 minutes, he finally gave up. We couldn't wait any longer. Four experienced mentors led the way to the novice dungeon. They were all between level 10 and 15, more than enough to handle anything inside. During the bus ride, the strongest mentor, Zhang Ming, started lecturing us on the rules and dangers. I leaned my chin on my hand, staring out the window at the passing scenery. I already knew everything he was saying. The monsters in the novice dungeon were all level 1, with a level 2 boss at the end. The most important rule was that the dungeon reset every night at midnight. If you got separated from the group, you had to be out before the clock struck 12. He also warned us that we weren't the only school there. Other academies would be entering, and conflict was common. After 30 minutes, we arrived. I stepped off the bus and looked at the familiar entrance. A bitter laugh escaped me. In my last life, I spent an entire year stuck in this novice dungeon because I was too weak to move on. Looking back, it was embarrassing. "This is the entrance," Mentor Zhang Ming shouted, pointing to an area cordoned off with yellow tape. Have your IDs ready for registration. The other mentors began handing out basic equipment. When it was my turn, a mentor tried to hand me a wooden staff. I didn't take it. I shook my head instead. Mentor, can I trade this for a different weapon? The man froze, a look of total confusion on his face. Trade? For what? You're a summoner. You need a staff for your spirit power. Summoners relied on mental strength to dictate the power of their pets. Even though the school's gear was white-tier garbage, a little extra spirit power was better than nothing. My request started drawing a crowd. The other students looked at me with pure disdain. Can I have a bow? I asked, ignoring the stares. I mean, sure, the mentor stuttered. But why would a summoner want a bow? Because he's a necromancer, mentor. Zhang Yongxing shouted from the crowd, his voice full of mockery. He doesn't have any skills. He'd be better off asking for a meat cleaver. The plaza erupted in laughter. The mentor's expression shifted to one of pity. He suppressed a smile and handed me a basic bow. Thank you, I said politely. I checked the stats. Common bow, agility +1. It was pathetic, but it didn't matter. I stepped out of the line and walked straight up to Zhang Ming. Mentor Zhang, you don't need to worry about me. I'm going solo. I'll take full responsibility for whatever happens. I wasn't asking for permission. I was giving him a heads up. The mentor stood there, stunned. Occasionally, a student from a wealthy family would go solo, but they always had high-level bodyguards hiding in the shadows. But me? I was a trash class with no backing. Hey, Su Ming, stop right there. Zhang Ming finally yelled, snapping out of his trance. Ha! Zhang Yongxing doubled over, pointing at my back. The loser wants to go solo? He's literally walking to his death. Zhang Ming was turning red with anger. He thought I was being delusional, clinging to the ego I had before the awakening ceremony. Back then, I was one of the big 3 talents. Now, the school only cared about the other 2, Yi Lingfei and Hua Haitao. I was nothing to them. Zhang Ming didn't even bother chasing me. He wasn't going to waste energy on a dead man walking. I kept walking, my silhouette fading as I approached the dungeon gate. Mentor Zhang, I'm leaving the school group too. A girl's voice rang out from the crowd. Zhang Ming looked like he was about to have a stroke. What was wrong with everyone today? Was everyone trying to ditch the school's protection today? Did they all have a death wish? Zhang Ming spun around, his face red, ready to snap at whoever else was being difficult. But the words died in his throat. Yi Lingfei was stepping out from the crowd. Student Yi, Zhang Ming's tone shifted instantly. He was suddenly polite, almost pleading. This is absolutely not allowed. We are responsible for your safety. She was the school's rising star, their golden ticket. Zhang Ming couldn't let anything happen to her. He hesitated for a moment, then added, if you don't want to be with the large group, we can arrange for a private mentor to accompany you alone. Thank you for the offer, a voice interrupted. A middle-aged man in a sharp suit appeared at Yi Lingfei's side. He looked at Zhang Ming with a gaze that felt like a physical weight. But we will take care of our young lady ourselves. Zhang Ming froze. He could feel the raw pressure radiating off the man. This guy was high level, definitely over level 20. I see, Zhang Ming muttered, nodding quickly. With a senior like you there, she will be safe. As Yi Lingfei and her bodyguard walked away, another voice piped up from the back of the line. Mentor Zhang, I'm not going with the group either. Zhang Ming looked like he was about to have a stroke. What was wrong with this year's class? Hey, wait for me, a voice shouted from the distance. A figure was running toward the group, waving frantically, but I didn't stick around to see who it was. I had already reached the dungeon entrance. 2 uniformed guards stepped forward, blocking my path. Show your ID, one of them said. I handed it over without a word. They looked at the card, then looked at me. Their eyes widened. Are you sure you want to enter alone? The guard asked, his voice softening with pity. Don't throw your life away, kid. You're only level 1, and your class is. He trailed off, but I knew what he was thinking. He didn't want to see me get mauled by a level 1 mob. I'm sure, I said. My voice was steady. The guards exchanged a look and sighed, shaking their heads as they handed back my ID. Fine. Good luck. Thanks, I replied. I stepped through the swirling vortex of the portal. The world blurred, and suddenly, I was standing in a dense, dark forest. Trees twisted together like skeletal fingers, and the air was thick with the smell of damp earth. I gripped my bow and moved deep into the brush. Something was moving nearby. I didn't panic. I was level 1, and to the monsters here, I looked like an easy snack. They weren't afraid of me. A few seconds later, a green blur lunged from the bushes. It was small, ugly, and carried a rusted cleaver. It bared its yellow teeth at me. A goblin. I grinned. Time to use those points. Level up, I whispered. A pillar of golden light erupted around me. Level 2. I didn't stop there. I had over 38,000 experience points banked from my previous life. With my S-grade talent, my success rate for leveling up was a guaranteed 100% until level 10. Level up, level up, level up. The gold light flashed again and again until the experience ran dry. In an instant, I had jumped straight to level 6. I pulled up my status window. Name, Su Ming. Class, Necromancer. Level, 6. Agility, 12. Strength, 6. Spirit, 6. Constitution, 6. Available stat points, 30. I had 30 points to dump. Most people would balance their stats, but I knew better. I needed to be untouchable. I funneled every single point into agility. My agility stat rocketed to 42. I felt my body change. My muscles leaned out, and my senses sharpened until the world seemed to move in slow motion. The hunt was finally starting. I felt a surge of confidence I hadn't known since my reincarnation. The goblin stood there, blinking. It sensed the sudden shift in my power and looked completely confused. Asterisk thwip. 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 Asterisk. I moved so fast my hands were a blur. I fired 3 arrows in rapid succession. Asterisk Poochie. 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 Asterisk. The arrows buried themselves in the goblin's chest. Since I hadn't put any points into strength, the damage wasn't massive, but it hurt. The goblin let out a high-pitched screech. It realized I wasn't prey anymore. It turned tail and tried to bolt into the woods. Too late, I muttered. Trying to outrun a max agility build was suicide. I caught up to it in 2 strides. Thwip. Thwip. Asterisk. 2 more arrows hit home. The goblin tumbled forward, hitting the dirt with a heavy thud. It was dead. Asterisk kill confirmed. 5 experience points gained. Asterisk. 5 points was nothing to me now, but I walked over to the corpse anyway. I didn't have any emotion in my eyes. I knelt down and pulled my arrows out of its body. I only had 50 arrows in my quiver. I couldn't afford to be wasteful. Then, I took 1 arrow and jammed it into the goblin's skull, prying out a small, glass-like bead. A magic crystal. In this world, these crystals powered everything from cars to cities. A level 1 crystal was only worth about $200, but I was broke. My father, Su Chong, hadn't been able to work since his injury. $200 was a meal on the table. I shoved the crystal into my pocket. Now, for the real reason I was here. My heart started to race. My breath hitched. I placed my hand on the cold, green skin of the dead goblin. I stayed perfectly still. 1 second. 10 seconds. A full minute passed. A notification flashed in my vision. Necrotic information extracted. A chill ran down my spine, the good kind. This was it. This was why everyone thought my class was trash. Nobody ever stayed still long enough to let the extraction finish. They thought the skill didn't work. They were wrong. I checked my summon tab. It now read, Summons, 1/60th. Underneath, a new entry appeared. Level 1 Goblin Skeleton Warrior. Rise, I whispered. A black vortex opened on the ground. A creature made of bleached white bone crawled out. It held the same rusted cleaver the goblin had used, its skeletal frame rattling with every movement. It looked fragile, like a stiff breeze could knock it over. I didn't care. I burst out laughing. It worked. It was weak, sure, but it was stronger than I had been 5 minutes ago. I had my first soldier. The army of the dead was officially open for business. I knew the biggest difference between a necromancer and a regular summoner. Regular summoners burned through their mental energy every time they called a creature. Their summons were only as strong as their own minds. My class was different. As long as I extracted the information from a corpse, that creature was saved in my tab forever. Calling them cost me 0 mental energy. Even if they died in battle, I could just summon them again as long as I didn't delete their data. Their strength didn't depend on my stats either. It depended entirely on what they were in life. My mental stats were irrelevant. I took a closer look at my first skeleton's attributes. It was level 1 with 5 points in strength, 3 in agility, and 3 in constitution. I felt a wave of mixed emotions. At level 1, I actually wasn't a match for my own summon. Those old rumors about a necromancer getting killed by a level 1 mob 100 years ago were definitely true. We were glass cannons without the cannon part. I packed up and moved deeper into the woods with my lone soldier. It didn't take long to find a second goblin. With the skeleton warrior taking the hits, the fight was a joke. I killed it easily and gained 5 experience points. While I crouched down to extract the necrotic information, I let my skeleton do the dirty work of digging out the magic crystal. Once the extraction finished, I summoned the new one immediately. Having 2 skeletal guards flanking me made me feel a lot safer. I kept pushing forward until the sound of shrill goblin shrieks echoed through the trees. I picked up the pace. I needed to grow my army, and 2 wasn't enough. I was level 6 now, which meant I had 60 slots for summons. The thought of 60 skeletons marching behind me made my blood pump. But as I got closer, the noise sounded wrong. There were too many of them. I slowed down, creeping through the brush to get a look. My eyes widened. There were 12 goblins circling 2 people. The monsters were snarling and waving their weapons, but they seemed hesitant to close in. I recognized one of the figures immediately from her profile. Yilingfei. I was stunned. Why was she here with only one other person? She was the school's prize student, a panda-level asset they were supposed to protect at all costs. The man with her wasn't a teacher from the academy. He was dressed in a sharp suit, looking completely out of place in a damp cave. "Miss, you can't be soft-hearted with these monsters," the man in the suit said. He sounded like he was giving a private lesson. "If you are, you're the one who suffers." "I understand, Uncle Zhong," Yilingfei replied, nodding seriously. "Good. There are quite a few here, so I'll clear the field for you first." A glowing machete materialized in Uncle Zhong's hand. He blurred into motion. "Thunderbolt whirlwind slash," he roared. He tore into the pack like a hurricane. Cold light flashed everywhere. In the blink of an eye, half the goblins were dead. My jaw hit the floor. This was my first time seeing a high-level powerhouse smoothing in a novice dungeon. He killed them with a single move. If I stood in front of him, I'd be deleted instantly. I pulled my neck back into the bushes, terrified he'd spot me. In places like this, people died all the time. Nobody cared if a monster killed you or if a human did. "Let's go, miss," Uncle Zhong said, finishing off the rest in 2 swipes. "We'll find a lone one for you to practice on." I waited until their backs disappeared completely before I dared to breathe. I stepped out of the grass and looked at the pile of corpses. A huge grin spread across my face. Talk about a windfall. Yilingfei was clearly from a rich family. She didn't care about $200 crystals, but I did. "You too, dig out the crystals," I ordered my skeletons. I knelt down and started extracting. 1 minute per corpse. 12 minutes later, I was done. "Rise, my warriors," I whispered. Black vortexes spiraled open one after another. Skeletons crawled out of the earth until 14 of them stood around me. As long as I didn't run into any more high-level freaks, I could walk through this dungeon sideways. I spent the rest of the day hunting. My army grew into a tide of bone that crashed through the forest. By nightfall, I had 25 skeleton warriors. I had no intention of leaving. I started a campfire right there in the middle of the dungeon. Most solo players were probably running for the exit by now. At midnight, the dungeon would refresh, spawning massive amounts of monsters. Combined with the darkness, it was a death sentence for the weak. A stray goblin, attracted by the light, wandered into my camp and screeched at me. I barely looked up. With a single thought, my 25 skeletons swarmed it. The poor thing looked terrified for the half-second it stayed alive before being hacked to pieces. Kill confirmed. 5 experience points gained. I stood up slowly and snapped my fingers as the extraction finished. Number 26. Get in line. Suddenly, I heard voices in the distance. "Hey, look over there. Is that a fire? Someone's there." I didn't hesitate. I leaped into a tree, hiding in the thick canopy, and willed my entire army back into their black vortexes. In seconds, the camp was silent, save for the crackling wood. 3 figures stepped into the light. "Where'd they go?" one of them asked, looking at the empty fire. "It's just a pile of wood." The leader of the group stepped forward. He was a young man I knew all too well, Zhang Yongxing. He cursed under his breath as he reached the fire, kicking the burning logs and scattering sparks everywhere. I frowned from my spot in the trees. My eyes quickly shifted to the two men with him. They felt dangerous. Their presence was heavy, far stronger than mine, which meant their levels were high. "Xiao Chang, stay here and look after the young master," the older man said. "I'm going to scout the perimeter." "Don't worry, Uncle Zhang. I've got him," the younger guard replied. Uncle Zhang nodded and vanished into the darkness of the forest. Now, only Xiao Chang remained at Zhang Yongxing's side. I narrowed my eyes, a cold light flickering in my gaze. Should I do it? Should I strike now? I didn't have to think long. If Zhang Yongxing didn't die, I would never be able to settle the hatred burning in my heart. I focused my mind. Below, black vortexes tore open the earth in every direction. One by one, my goblin skeleton warriors crawled out of the shadows. I gave them a single, silent command: kill Zhang Yongxing. "Wait, what's that sound?" Xiao Chang asked, his head snapping toward the rustling in the bushes. "What could it be?" Zhang Yongxing snapped, looking bored. Uncle Zhang just checked the area. If there was anything dangerous, he would have killed it already. "Something is coming. Young master, watch out," Xiao Chang shouted. He had spotted the first skeleton emerging from the dark. Zhang Yongxing finally stiffened. He followed the guard's gaze and paled. Skeletons were appearing everywhere, surrounding them. "What the hell are these?" Zhang Yongxing's voice shook. "They said this dungeon only had goblins. Why are there skeletons?" "I don't know," Xiao Chang said, trying to stay calm despite the shock in his eyes. "But they look like goblins. Maybe they're undead versions. This is bad luck. Why are there so many?" Zhang Yongxing panicked as more white bones emerged from the trees. "Don't worry, young master. They're only level 1. I can handle this." Xiao Chang raised his magic staff, his body tensing into a battle stance. A mage. Level 10. Now that he was ready to fight, I could see his stats. The level gap was massive, but I didn't back down. I didn't care. "Kill them," I commanded silently. The skeletons lunged. "Fireball!" Xiao Chang yelled. He swung his staff, sending spheres of flame crashing into my army. Each hit shattered a skeleton into dust. But there were 25 of them, and he wasn't finding it easy. He had to stay glued to Zhang Yongxing's side to protect him, which severely limited his movements. "Xiao Chang, hold them off. Don't let them get me." Zhang Yongxing cowered behind his guard, shouting useless encouragement. They began to retreat, fighting a losing battle against the terrain. What is going on? They won't stop coming. Xiao Chang's brow was soaked in sweat. He realized that every time he smashed a skeleton, a new one crawled out nearby. It was a never-ending cycle. Even though they were weak, the sheer numbers were wearing him down. What confused him even more was that he wasn't getting a single point of experience for killing them. He didn't have time to wonder why, though. He had a little trash master to protect. "Young master, you have to help. Fight back," Xiao Chang gasped. He had already killed dozens of skeletons, and his stamina was draining fast. "What? Me? Then what am I paying you for?" Zhang Yongxing shook his head violently. The sight of the skeletons was enough to paralyze him. He wouldn't lift a finger. "Let's see how long you can last," I thought, watching from above. Every time a skeleton fell, I simply summoned it back. As long as I was alive, my army was infinite. This was the true terror of a necromancer. It was also why I had dumped all my points into agility. As long as I was fast enough to avoid being caught, my summons would eventually grind any enemy into the dirt. Damn it! Why won't they die? Xiao Chang was drenched in sweat now. He realized the skeletons were ignoring him and going straight for Zhang Yongxing. He couldn't leave his master's side for a second. "Are you incompetent or what?" Zhang Yongxing screamed, noticing the guard flagging. "Shut up. These things are weird. Someone is controlling them from the shadows." Xiao Chang had figured it out, but he was too busy to search for me. "Then kill them faster. They're getting closer." Xiao Chang looked around. They were completely surrounded. "You think I'll fall in a novice dungeon? You underestimate me," he roared. "Stop talking and do something," Zhang Yongxing hissed. Flame burst. Xiao Chang screamed. It was a level 10 skill he had just learned. A massive star-shaped magic circle ignited under his feet. A second later, a violent explosion rocked the clearing. Flames shot into the sky, and a huge chunk of my skeleton army was incinerated instantly. Xiao Chang slumped, his face turning ghostly pale as he wheezed for air. The move had drained almost everything he had left. Finally, if you had such a strong move, why didn't you use it earlier? You scared me for nothing, Zhang Yongxing complained, completely oblivious to his guard's exhaustion. I leaned out from the branches, my eyes narrowing. That explosion was too loud. Uncle Zhang would be heading back right now. According to Xiao Chang's behavior, Uncle Zhang was much stronger. If he returned, I was finished. I had one shot left. If this failed, I had to retreat. Rise again, my warriors, I whispered. Black vortexes opened once more. The skeletons stepped out of the dark, their bone blades gleaming in the dying firelight. Bastard! Who's there? Show yourself, Xiao Chang screamed, his voice cracking with desperation. Xiao Chang, use that move again. Blow them up, Zhang Yongxing laughed, acting tough now that he thought the guard had it under control. Flame burst. Xiao Chang forced the spell out again. Another explosion cleared the area, but this time, he stumbled back, barely able to stand. I saw my opening. I leaned out, drew my basic bow to full tension, and aimed straight for Zhang Yongxing's throat. Zip! The arrow hissed through the air. Look out! Xiao Chang's eyes went wide. With the last of his strength, he lunged forward and shoved Zhang Yongxing out of the way. The arrow buried itself deep into Xiao Chang's arm. Zhang Yongxing, caught off guard by the shove, went flying face-first into the dirt. Ow! You idiot! He barked, eating a mouthful of mud. Xiao Chang let out a blood-curdling scream. He spun around, staring wildly toward the spot where my arrow had come from. What the hell, Xiao Chang? Are you trying to die? How dare you push me? Zhang Yongxing barked, scrambling up from the dirt in a rage. He was ready to tear into his guard, but he froze when he saw the arrow buried in Xiao Chang's arm. Zip! 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 3 more arrows hissed through the air before they could react. Fireball! Xiao Chang shouted, desperation in his voice. He threw a ball of flame to intercept the projectiles. He managed to knock 2 out of the sky, but the third one found its mark. The arrow tore into Zhang Yongxing's shoulder. Arg! Zhang Yongxing's eyes bulged as he let out a pathetic wail. He never expected to be ambushed like this. He collapsed to the ground, clutching his wound in agony. My remaining skeleton warriors didn't waste the opportunity. They swarmed forward, blades raised, ready to finish him off. Fireball! Fireball! Xiao Chang was sweating bullets now. He hurled spell after spell at the skeletons, but he was exhausted. One skeleton slipped through the flames. It reached Zhang Yongxing, raising its bone sword for the kill. Zhang Yongxing ignored the pain in his shoulder and scrambled backward, kicking at the dirt in a blind panic. Die! I whispered from the shadows. A dark smile spread across my face. Clang! Just as the skeleton swung its blade, a figure blurred into view. A long spear swept out, blocking the strike and shattering the skeleton in a single blow. My heart sank. The smile vanished from my face instantly. I didn't hesitate. I turned and bolted into the darkness. Uncle Zhang was back. If I didn't leave right now, I was a dead man. I had come so close to ending Zhang Yongxing. Just one more second, and he would have been gone. What happened? Uncle Zhang asked, his voice cold as he stood over the trembling Zhang Yongxing. Uncle Zhang, we're under attack. Xiao Chang pointed a shaking finger toward the trees where I had been hiding. He's right there. Watch the young master, Uncle Zhang commanded. He vanished, his speed incredible. In seconds, he reached my hiding spot. But I was already gone. All he found was the empty air and the hollowed-out corpse of a goblin I had looted earlier. Someone had definitely been there. Uncle Zhang, did you get him? Zhang Yongxing had pulled the arrow from his shoulder. His face was pale, his voice trembling with a mix of fear and fury. He escaped, Uncle Zhang said, shaking his head. He was fast. By the time I got there, he'd vanished. Who was it? Xiao Chang gritted his teeth and ripped the arrow out of his own arm. An archer, Uncle Zhang said, picking up 2 blood-stained arrows from the ground. But not a normal one. He can control skeletons. Xiao Chang quickly explained everything he had seen. A necromancer? Uncle Zhang frowned. He couldn't think of any other class that fit the description. But that's impossible. Necromancy is a rare, powerful class. I haven't heard of any new necromancers at the academy. Besides, what kind of necromancer uses a bow? That's just stupid. He paused, his expression shifting. Wait, no rookie could be that fast. even if they dumped every point into agility. This wasn't a student. It must be an assassin sent by another faction to kill the young master. Uncle Zhang looked at the wounded Zhang Yongxing. We can't stay here. We're leaving the dungeon immediately. Ouch. Watch it, Uncle Zhang. That hurts. Zhang Yongxing whined as he was helped up. Despite the pain, he looked relieved. He had seen enough of this place. Meanwhile, I was miles away, deep in the forest. I punched a tree trunk in frustration. I hated that they got away. Every time I remembered how they treated me in my past life, how they betrayed me and left me to die, the rage burned hotter. I need to get stronger, I muttered, looking toward the heart of the dungeon. The boss. I need to kill the boss. I forced myself to calm down. I kept moving deeper into the woods as night fell. The dungeon was deathly quiet, save for the occasional chirp of an insect. Most of the goblins in this area had already been cleared out. I climbed a high tree to wait for the midnight reset. To stay hidden, I only kept 2 goblin skeletons active, tucked away in the branches with me. I was more exhausted than I realized. As I leaned against the bark, my eyes drifted shut. 23 hours, 59 minutes, and 58 seconds. 23 hours, 59 minutes, and 59 seconds. Midnight. The entire dungeon flickered. A strange energy surged through the air, but I slept right through it. All the monsters respawned, their numbers far greater than before. Soon, the sound of distant fighting echoed through the trees. I jolted awake and stretched, nearly tumbling off my branch. Whoa! I grabbed a limb just in time. That was close. I checked the time. It was 7 minutes past midnight. The reset had happened. I didn't care about the monsters on the ground yet. I immediately opened my system. Extract experience, I commanded. Extraction successful. Gained 86,400 experience points. Asterisk. Even though I knew the math, seeing that number made my heart race. I opened my status window and looked at my level. I was level 6, with nearly 100,000 points in the bank. Level up, I said firmly. Pillars of light erupted around me, one after another. I shot from level 6 to level 9 in an instant. I was one step away from level 10. My summon limit jumped from 60 to 90. I couldn't help it. I started laughing. In just 2 days, I had reached a level of power that took others 3 years to achieve. I had 18 free attribute points sitting there, but I didn't use them yet. My agility was already high enough to outrun almost anyone in this novice dungeon. I wanted to see what skills I would unlock at level 10 before I committed the points. My laughter drew some unwanted attention. 3 goblins were standing at the base of the tree, staring up at me. I looked down, ready to brush them off, but then I paused. Something was wrong. They looked different. Had the dungeon changed while I was asleep? They were only level 2, but they didn't look like the ordinary goblins I had been hunting. I straightened my back and squinted at the ground. The 3 goblins staring up at me were level 2. That was impossible. This was a novice dungeon. Aside from the final boss, every single monster in here was supposed to be level 1. I knew the history of this place by heart, but it seemed my presence had shifted the timeline. The world was changing. The goblins growled, snapping me out of my thoughts. One started scrambling up the trunk toward me, while the other 2 scrambled for rocks to throw. I wasn't going to sit here and wait. Get them, I commanded. The 2 skeleton warriors guarding my branch leaped down. One swung its rusted blade, slamming into the climbing goblin. The creature shrieked, forced to abandon its climb to defend itself. But the tide turned quickly. The 2 goblins with rocks joined the fray, making it a 3-on-2 fight. With their level advantage and superior numbers, they smashed my skeletons into piles of white dust in seconds. The goblins howled in triumph. They waved their crude blades at me, screeching in mockery as if they had already won. Look at you all, acting tough? I sneered from my perch. With a single thought, I unleashed everything. I summoned my entire army at once. 25 skeleton warriors materialized in a circle surrounding the 3 goblins. The monsters froze. The excitement in their eyes vanished, replaced by pure, shivering terror. I snapped my fingers. Kill them. The goblins fought back desperately, but numbers don't lie. It was a massacre. Blades flashed, green blood sprayed, and within seconds, they were hacked to pieces. Asterisk kill confirmed. Gained 10 experience points. Asterisk. Asterisk kill confirmed. Gained 10 experience points. Asterisk. 30 points total. I hopped down from the tree and got to work. I extracted the souls and sent my skeletons to dig for mana crystals. Level 2 crystals were worth $500 each, way better than the level 1s. I looked at my new recruits. I now had 25 level 1 skeletons and 3 level 2 skeletons. I summoned the level 2 versions immediately. They were taller, broader, and more intimidating. I pulled up their stats to see the difference. Name: Goblin Skeleton Warrior level, 2 Strength, 8 Agility. For Spirit, 1 Constitution, 5. I nodded, satisfied. They were significantly stronger. If the whole dungeon had leveled up like this, the other students were in deep trouble. A normal level 1 student would struggle against just one of these. If they pulled 2, it was game over. A massive explosion echoed in the distance. The ground shook. Someone was in a serious fight. I pocketed the crystals my skeletons brought back and headed toward the noise. I wasn't a hero, but I was definitely a scavenger. As I got closer, I saw a group from my academy. It was a mentor, a level 12 mage, leading 10 students. In a normal novice dungeon, a level 12 mage could carry 10 idiots through anything. But things weren't normal anymore. They were surrounded by over a dozen level 2 goblins, and more were crawling out of the shadows. I watched from the brush. Remembering how these people had mocked me earlier, I felt zero urge to help. A stray goblin spotted me and lunged. Before it could even get close, my skeleton wall intercepted it. They dragged it into the darkness and silenced it quickly. Asterisk kill confirmed. Gained 10 experience points. The commotion caught the group's attention. One of the students had sharp eyes. "It's Su Ming," she shouted. The group froze. They all remembered me, the trash class who insisted on going solo. They couldn't believe I was still alive. I recognized the voice, but I didn't care. I knelt down to extract the soul from the goblin my minions just killed. In the dark, they could see my silhouette, but they couldn't see the army of undead standing behind me. "Su Ming, did you lead these monsters to us?" the girl screamed. I looked up, stunned by the sheer stupidity of the question. I recognized her now. It was Xinyao, my ex-crush. This girl really must love me to recognize me in the pitch black, just so she could blame me for her problems. "It has to be him," Xinyao yelled, her voice full of certainty. "He's a loser who can't fight. He probably ran into a pack and led them straight to us to save his own skin." The others nodded. It made sense to them. In their minds, the only way I could survive was by being a coward. "What kind of nonsense are you talking about, you bitch?" I called back. I was done being polite. "If you didn't lead them here, why are you lurking in the shadows?" Xinyao barked. The mentor stepped forward, casting a massive spell that cleared half the field. He turned his eyes toward me, full of righteous indignation. "Su Ming, your actions are shameful," he said coldly. "You've put your classmates in grave danger. Rest assured, I will be reporting this to the principal. You're finished." I rolled my eyes. Let them complain. I didn't care about their petty drama. "Exactly," Xinyao sneered. "We'll make sure the whole school knows. You can forget about taking the grand exam in 7 days. You won't even be allowed in." The grand exam. Her words sparked a memory. In my past life, I was in the hospital during the exam and missed it entirely. I tried to remember the details, but honestly, nothing about it had ever seemed that interesting to me. Until now. The grand exam. It was basically a massive trial where every academy in Jiangxing City gathered to compete. The big guilds watched from the sidelines, ready to scout the top performers. Joining a guild meant resources, protection, and a real future. I was lost in thought when a sickening wet sound broke the silence. "Poochie!" a student screamed. A goblin's rusted blade had driven straight through his chest. I watched as his eyes bulged, blood bubbling from his lips. He probably thought this dungeon was his first step toward glory. Instead, he was dying in the dirt of a novice trial. "Fireball! Chow gone!" the mentor shouted in a panic. He hurled a sphere of flame, blasting the goblin into ash. "Mentor Chow? Li Guang is fading," a student yelled, rushing to the fallen boy's side. They checked his pulse, but it was too late. He was already gone. "Damn it!" Chow Gon's face twisted. "Xinyao, heal him. Now." Xinyao nodded frantically. As a priest, she had a basic healing chant. She raised her hands, and a soft golden light washed over Li Guang's body. Nothing happened. The light flickered and died against his cold skin. The air grew heavy with silence. Chaogan's face turned a sickly shade of green. I knew he didn't care about Li Guang. He cared about his career. A student death on a guided run meant an investigation. It meant losing his rewards and facing a heavy penalty. It's all Su Ming's fault, Shen Yao shrieked, pointing a finger at me. Yes, exactly. It's Su Ming's fault. Chaogan latched onto her words like a drowning man grabbing a rope. I'm reporting this to the school. No, I'm reporting this to the authorities. He turned to the remaining students, his eyes wide and frantic. You all saw it, right? Su Ming lured those monsters here. He trapped us. If it wasn't for him, Li Guang would be alive. The other students looked at each other, then slowly began to nod. They needed a scapegoat just as much as he did. I've seen some shameless people, I said, shaking my head with a bitter laugh. But this is a new low. A mentor, a supposed role model, was throwing a student under the bus to save his own skin. The goblins didn't care about our drama. They surged forward again. Chaogan and the students were forced to turn back to the fight. Spells flew and blades clashed in the dark. By the time the last monster fell, 2 more students were dead. 3 deaths. Chaogan looked like his head was about to explode. 1 death was a tragedy. 3 was a catastrophe. Unless he pinned it all on me, he was finished. Su Ming, don't you dare run. Chaogan barked at the shadows where I stood. Get over here. Yeah, come out. Shen Yao added, her voice dripping with venom. Your half-dead father isn't here to back you up today. Just give up. I felt a cold chill run down my spine. My expression darkened. My father? Half-dead? Wait, you know his father? Chaogan asked, looking surprised. Of course, Shen Yao sneered. I've seen him. He looks like a walking corpse. He's a berserker, but honestly, he looks like he's 1 foot in the grave. Chaogan burst out laughing. Oh, you mean Su Chong? I know that name. He's famous. Was he strong? Shen Yao asked. Strong. Chaogan scoffed, shaking his head. 5 years ago, word got out that he only survived his final mission by being a coward. He's a deserter, a total fraud. He's been a cripple ever since. And his wife? She died back then too. I wouldn't be surprised if she was executed right alongside him for running away. I stood in the darkness, my knuckles white as I gripped my bow, my vision blurred with pure, unadulterated rage. Mentor Chao, Shen Yao whispered, her voice low and calculating. What if we say these 3 students didn't die to monsters? What if we say Su Ming killed them? The other students gasped. Even Chaogan looked startled for a second. He hadn't expected a girl like her to be this vicious. He'd be expelled, Chaogan said, a slow, cruel smile spreading across his face. And the authorities would execute him. If we just say he lured the monsters, he might get away with a fine, Shen Yao continued, her eyes flashing in the dark. But if he's a murderer, brilliant, Chaogan whispered. Perfect. He looked at the other students. They saw the look in his eyes and quickly nodded. Their stories were aligned. My life was officially over in their eyes. Su Ming, come out and surrender, Chaogan shouted, his voice full of fake authority. You've murdered your classmates. Your crimes are unforgivable. I felt a wave of disgust so strong it made me nauseous. They insulted me. They insulted my parents. And now they were framing me for murder. Go to hell, I growled. I stepped out from the trees, my bow already drawn. Snap, snap, snap. 3 arrows whistled through the air in an instant. You're playing with fire. Chaogan laughed. He raised a hand, dismissively casting a fireball to knock my arrows out of the sky. A trash class novice thinks he can touch a level 12 mage? You're asking for death. He's attacking us. Shen Yao screamed, fueling the fire. Mentor, kill him now. He's dangerous. He really thinks he's still a genius, a student mocked. He's just a loser. If you want to play, I said, my voice cold as ice, then let's play big. Nobody is leaving this forest. I walked fully into the light of their torches. I had hidden my level to avoid trouble, but the moment I entered combat, my stats flashed over my head for everyone to see. Level 9. The mockery died instantly. The silence was deafening. That's impossible, Shen Yao stammered, her face turning pale. How are you level 9? Chaogan was frozen. He had been a mentor for years. He had never seen anyone hit level 9 in 2 days, let alone someone with a trash class. It was a fairy tale. What kind of trick is this? Xiaogan demanded. None of your business, I replied. My eyes were locked on his throat. You? Xiaogan's face turned red with fury. He felt his dignity as a mentor shattering. You all saw it. He killed his classmates, he attacked us, and now he's defying his teacher. He deserves to die. Yes. Xinyao snapped out of her shock, nodding frantically. We'll all testify. Kill him, mentor. Xiaogan didn't want to believe my level 9 status was real, but he didn't care about the truth anymore. All he saw was a chance to kill me and claim a massive reward from Zhang Yongxing. He looked at the other students, saw their nodding heads and eager faces, and felt his conscience clear. You really think you can kill me? I asked, raising an eyebrow. My voice was thick with mockery. Arrogant brat. Xiaogan barked. He raised his hand, and a fireball streaked toward me like a comet. Boom. The explosion echoed through the trees. The flames hit a target, but it wasn't me. What the hell is that? Xiaogan's brow furrowed. His face twisted into a mask of shock. A skeleton monster? Xinyao gasped. Her eyes went wide, her face pale with terror. I stood calmly behind the wall of bone. They were drowning in surprises today. First, my impossible level 9, and now this grim, silent creature shielding me from a direct hit. They couldn't wrap their heads around it. Surprised? I asked. I could see the confusion rotting their confidence. Xiaogan struggled for words. This was outside everything he knew about trash classes. He gritted his teeth, trying to regain control. Don't think a few cheap tricks make you special. In the face of absolute power, these toys are useless. Is that so? I tucked my bow away and slowly slid my hands into my pockets. I didn't hide my arrogance. I wanted them to see it. Come out, my warriors. One by one, skeletons crawled out of the shadows of the forest. 10, 20, nearly 30 skeleton warriors emerged, their eye sockets glowing with a hateful red light. The air grew heavy with the pressure of death. Xiaogan froze. Xinyao looked like she was about to faint. The reality of the situation finally started to sink in. Was the level 9 real? Did I really summon an entire army? The trash class. How is this possible? Xiaogan felt like his head was going to explode. He couldn't accept what he was seeing. Tell me, this is just an illusion, isn't it? I didn't bother answering. I looked at Shun Yao's trembling frame and the mentor, who wanted me dead. Kill them, I commanded. The skeletons didn't hesitate. They raised their rusted blades and charged. Don't panic, Xiaogan shouted, trying to rally the terrified students. Fight with me. These level 1 skeletons are nothing. He wasn't wrong. A few low-level skeletons weren't a threat to a level 12 mage. He was shocked by my power, but he wasn't desperate yet. In fact, seeing my potential only made him more determined. If he didn't kill me now, I would become a nightmare he couldn't escape. Flame burst. Xiaogan roared. A massive explosion ripped through the front line of my summons. Nearly 10 skeletons shattered into dust instantly. Seeing them fall, the other students found their courage. They drew their weapons and joined the fray. Within minutes, my first wave of warriors was wiped out. Haraha. Su Ming. Xiaogan wiped sweat from his forehead, panting. He had already been exhausted from a previous fight, and this skirmish was draining him further. Your little pets are dead. Now what are you going to do? Mentor, stop talking and just kill him. Xinyao screamed. She wanted me dead before anything else could go wrong. I looked at her and felt a pang of self-mockery. I used to treat you so well. You really can't wait to see me die, can you? So what, she spat. Did I ask you to be nice to me? You did that yourself. Don't blame me for your own stupidity. In her eyes, I was still nothing compared to a rich heir like Zhang Yongxing. This will be the last mistake you ever make, I said, my eyes narrowing. Mistake? Once you're dead, young Master Zhang will treat me like a queen. I'll never regret this. Is that so? I whispered. My voice was as cold as a grave. Come out again, my warriors. The forest floor churned. Another massive wave of skeletons climbed out of the dirt, surrounding them once more. Xinyao jaw dropped. We had just finished a battle, yet here was another army, fresh and ready. It wasn't just her. Xiaogan looked like he'd seen a ghost. They fought again, hacking and blasting their way through the bone warriors, but as soon as one fell, another took its place. Once, twice. It was an endless cycle. You bastard. These are your summoned creatures? Xiaogan finally realized the horror of my class. You're not as dumb as you look. I chuckled. The students were paralyzed with fear. This was a necromancer? The trash class with no skills and terrible stats? Everything they had been told was a lie. Looking at the endless tide of bone, Shun Yao felt a flicker of regret. But Chao Gan was past regret. He was in survival mode. He knew if this news got out, the entire country would be shaken. My status would skyrocket, and he would be hunted down for trying to murder a national treasure. I have to end this now. Chao Gan hissed. Flame burst. He cleared a path and lunged straight for me. He knew the weakness of summoners. Their physical stats were usually garbage. If he could just reach me, it would be over. But with him gone, the students lost their primary protection. Minter, help us! They screamed as the skeletons closed in. They're too close. We can't hold them. Chao Gan ignored them. Nothing mattered more than my head. Die! He screamed, launching a fireball at point-blank range. I let out a sharp laugh and stepped to the side. My agility was 45, higher than his. I moved like a blur, the flames passing harmlessly by my shoulder. Chao Gan blinked. Where were the trash stats? I was faster than him. Block him, I ordered. As I dodged, I summoned several more skeletons directly in his path. These things won't stop me, he roared, smashing through one of them. I just smiled. He was right. A level 1 skeleton couldn't stop a level 12 mage. But I didn't need them to kill him. I just needed them to drain him. He was already exhausted, and I had an infinite supply of soldiers. He was a bird trapped in a cage, and the bars were made of bone. Asterisk squelch. Squelch. Asterisk behind him, screams cut through the night. Without Chao Gan's fire, 2 students were already down, bleeding out in the dirt. Xin Yao finally broke. The reality of death was staring her in the face. Su Ming. Stop. Please let us go. Yes, Su Ming. We're sorry. Just let us live, another student wailed. I didn't stop. They hadn't planned on letting me live. Why should I return the favor? We didn't see anything. We saw nothing, the students shrieked. Xin Yao finally smelled the scent of death. Just like I told her moments ago, she was starting to regret everything. If she had known I was this strong, she never would have pulled such a stupid stunt. I could see the fury in her eyes, but it wasn't directed at me anymore. She was cursing whoever told her that necromancers were a trash class. Because of that one lie, she had thrown me away. She had traded a genius who used to follow her like a loyal dog for the chance to be someone else's lapdog. I could see it in her face. She wanted to slap herself. Kid, stop running if you've got the guts. Chao Gan roared, his breathing heavy and ragged. He couldn't catch me. Every skill he threw missed by a mile. He was gasping for air, his face pale from exhaustion. The moment he slowed down, my skeletons swarmed him again. He unleashed one last burst of flame, shattering them into bone dust, but it was a desperate move. I didn't care. I slowly raised my bow and aimed it right at his chest. Whiz, whiz, whiz. I let the arrows fly. You bastard. Chao Gan hissed. He was running on empty. He forced out 2 more fireballs to intercept my arrows, but his focus was entirely on what was in front of him. He forgot about what was behind. Squelch. A skeleton I had summoned in the shadows stepped out and buried its rusted blade deep into his back. Arg! The scream was gut-wrenching. Chao Gan collapsed into the dirt, the wound on his back showing white bone. He gasped for air, his lips trembling from the sheer agony. Before he could even try to crawl away, 2 more skeletons rushed forward and stabbed him again. Asterisk squelch. Squelch. Asterisk His screams echoed through the dark woods. He looked up at me, cold sweat dripping down his forehead. You wouldn't dare kill me. He wheezed, trying to find a shred of authority. I didn't say a word. I walked up to him, pulled a fresh arrow, and drew the string to full tension. The tip of the arrow was inches from his forehead. If I let go, his head would pop like a melon. Chao Gan swallowed hard. He knew his life hung on a single thread. If you kill me, the academy, the officials, they'll never let you go. He saw me hesitate, or at least he thought he did. He thought he had found my weakness. Fine, I said, lowering the bow. I nodded as if I actually agreed with him. Chao Gan let out a massive sigh of relief. He thought he was safe. Squelch. In that exact moment of relief, a skeleton behind him drove a machete straight through his spine. Gah! Chao Gan's eyes bulged. He coughed up a spray of blood, looking at me with pure confusion and betrayal. Before he could utter another word, a dozen skeletons swarmed him, stabbing downward again and again. Within seconds, the life left his eyes. He died staring at the sky, unable to even close his lids. "Thanks for the advice," I whispered to his corpse. "If I shot him with an arrow, it was murder. The school wouldn't ignore a massacre like this. But if the skeletons killed him? Well, goblins used the same weapons. There were dead goblins everywhere. Who could prove it wasn't the monsters?" I looked up at the 5 remaining students. They were surrounded, huddling together and shaking like leaves. Seeing Chao Gan's brutal end had shattered whatever pride they had left. Su Ming, I was wrong. I was so wrong. Xin Yao's eyes were red, her voice trembling in a pathetic, damsel in distress act. "Is that so?" I thought. I flicked my wrist. The skeletons moved. Screams tore through the air as, one by one, the others were cut down. Soon, only Xun Yao was left standing in a pool of her friend's blood. She was white as a ghost, her body shaking so hard she could barely stand. "Su Ming, let's start over," she cried out. "I'll accept your love. I'll be your girlfriend. Right now? Just please." She was talking as fast as she could, terrified that if she stopped, she'd be next. I just looked at her and laughed. It was a cold, disgusted sound. Now she was sorry. "Please. I know I messed up. It was Zhang Yongxing. He seduced me," she wailed, sounding like she actually believed her own lies. I ignored her. I started counting the goblin corpses on the ground. 37. I knelt down and began extracting their soul energy, while my skeletons went to work digging out the mana crystals from their skulls. I even tried to extract energy from Chao Gan's body, but nothing happened. It only worked on monsters. Xin Yao watched me, completely baffled. When she realized I wasn't attacking her, she let out a long breath. She actually thought I still loved her. She thought I couldn't bring myself to hurt her. Then, I saw her eyes shift. She was looking at the mana crystals my skeletons were piling up. Each one was worth 500 credits. 37 crystals meant 18,500 credits. It was a fortune for a student from a normal family. I caught the greed in her eyes and felt a wave of nausea. Even now, surrounded by the bodies of the people she knew, she was thinking about the money. She was a gold digger to her very core. After half an hour, I finished my work. My summon count had jumped from 29 to 66. I had 25 level 1 skeletons and 41 level 2s. As I stood up, Xin Yao hurried over, trying to act sweet. She reached out to wipe the sweat from my forehead, but I shoved her away. She looked confused, then hurt. She probably thought I was just playing hard to get because I was still jealous. I didn't give her time to process it. My skeletons closed in, hurting her forward. She turned pale again, realizing she was my prisoner. We walked for a long time until we ran into a pack of 5 level 2 goblins. I looked at the monsters and let out a dark, wicked smile. Finally, Xin Yao wasn't even scared. She had seen my power. She thought as long as she stayed behind me, she was invincible. She actually started smiling, looking at me with this sweet expression like we were on a date. I looked at her like she was a mental patient. I had no idea what was going on in her head, and I didn't care. "Go on," I said coldly. Xin Yao kept smiling at me, unmoving. I said, "Go on." I snapped. She just stood there, blinking like an idiot. She was a priest. It was time she did her job. I lost my patience and snapped at her again. Me. Xin Yao pointed a finger at herself, looking completely baffled. "Aren't you going to call those skeleton monsters? Why are you telling me to go? I'm just a priest." She started acting all coy and fidgety next to me. I guess she thought a girl shouldn't have to fight monsters. "Are you going or not?" I asked, my brow furrowing. My voice was getting colder by the second. "How can you ask a girl to do that?" she whined, using that soft, cutesy voice she thought was irresistible. She actually reached out to grab the edge of my shirt, trying to act cute. I didn't hesitate. I ripped my shirt out of her hand and gave her a violent shove. Xin Yao was stunned. She couldn't understand why I was pushing her away. In her mind, she had already agreed to be my girlfriend. Wasn't that enough? What else did I want? She wasn't prepared for the force of the shove and hit the ground hard. "Su Ming, what the hell are you doing?" she shrieked at me. I just smiled. I didn't say a word. Instead, I commanded my skeleton warriors to step back, leaving her exposed. The 5 goblins saw their chance. They began to creep forward, their eyes fixed on her. Su Ming, stop playing. Save me. Help me. Her voice went from angry to terrified in a heartbeat. The dark shadows of the goblins loomed over her, and she finally realized the truth. I had abandoned her. Goblins are nasty creatures. They aren't known for being gentle with human women. Save me, she screamed, her heart consumed by pure terror. I stood in the distance with my hands in my pockets. I watched her struggle with zero pity. Soon, the sounds changed. The screaming turned into something more visceral, followed by a torrent of curses directed at me. She hated me now. She hated me with everything she had. Su Ming, you'll die a horrible death. I'll haunt you as a ghost. I didn't care about her curses. The more she hated me now, the more she deserved what was happening. Sure enough, the cursing didn't last long. It was replaced by shrill, agonizing screams that echoed through the woods. Bitch! This is your end, I muttered, a dark smirk tugging at my lips. After a while, the goblins tossed a dying Shun Yao aside like trash. They noticed I was still standing there and started moving toward me. I had actually scouted the entire area while they were busy, and I timed my return perfectly. Kill them, I commanded with a wave of my hand. My dozens of skeleton warriors swarmed forward. The goblins froze, but by the time they tried to run, it was too late. Kill confirmed. 10 XP gained. Kill confirmed. 10 XP gained. I walked over to Xin Yao's body. She was barely covered, her breathing shallow and ragged. I looked down at her and let out a small clicking sound with my tongue. I leaned in and realized she had already stopped breathing. Lucky you, I whispered, glancing at her corpse one last time. At least you had some fun before you kicked the bucket. I turned and walked away without looking back. I needed to find the boss. I had circled the area but couldn't find its lair yet. As I moved, I saw flickering lights in the distance, campfires from various school teams. I looked at the army of 71 skeletons following me. If I kept them all out, the commotion would be way too loud. It would draw too much attention, and I knew there were powerful people in this dungeon. I needed to stay low-key for now. I dismissed them, keeping my power hidden in the shadows. Meanwhile, at the entrance of the novice dungeon, a crowd had gathered. What's going on? The man leading the group was Bai Jianfeng, a powerhouse from the Saber Tiger Guild. He looked anxious as he approached the guards. Mr. Bai, there was an abnormal energy surge inside the dungeon, a guard reported. And Bai Jianfeng pressed. We sent scouts. All the level 1 monsters have mutated into level 2. Their numbers have spiked significantly. Bai Jianfeng's face turned grim. Level 2? That's not a novice dungeon anymore. Get them out. Now. This place is cursed. He gave the order for a full evacuation immediately. Then he turned to his guild members. You guys go in too. Protect the students and get them out safely. No casualties. With that, he stepped into the portal and his team followed. The Saber Tiger Guild was an official organization responsible for Jiangxing City. If the novice dungeon was breaking, it was their duty to fix it. Back inside, I was still cutting through the jungle. I passed another camp, and I could feel their eyes on me. A solo runner? How is he moving so fast alone? One student whispered. Hey friend, what school are you from? Someone shouted. I didn't have time for small talk. I kept walking toward the heart of the dungeon. He's ignoring us? Is he crazy? A scrawny guy muttered, watching me disappear into the dark. Things are getting weird in here. Everyone is talking about leaving, and he's charging deeper in. A few minutes later, I stumbled upon another camp. This one was different. It was my school, Jiangbei Academy. Their lead instructor, Zhang Ming, was the strongest mentor in the group. They had set up tents in a clearing, clearly planning to stay the night. They were all huddled around a fire while Zhang Ming gave a lecture on combat tactics. I stayed in the shadows, scanning the faces. Suddenly, I froze. Wang Xiaoming. My best friend was sitting right there. I remembered specifically that he hadn't made it to the assembly. How was he here? There were 12 students in the group, including the genius He Haitao. I frowned, thinking back to my past life. Did Wang Xiaoming die because of this dungeon mutation? No, that didn't make sense. The mutation never happened in my previous life. As I was thinking, Zhang Ming dismissed the group. 2 students stayed up for guard duty while the others headed to their tents. I sighed, preparing to leave, when Wang Xiaoming suddenly walked out of his tent and headed straight toward my hiding spot. Did he see me? It was pitch black, and I was hidden behind heavy brush. Even an owl would have trouble spotting me. I hesitated, then quickly climbed a tree to get a better vantage point. He was my best friend, after all. It would be a waste if I didn't scare the life out of him. This kid had loved climbing trees since he was a toddler. In one smooth motion, I pulled myself up and flattened my body against a thick branch. Wang Xiaoming reached the spot where I'd been standing just seconds ago. As I looked down, I noticed something off. His walk was stiff, and his expression looked strained, almost pained. A dark thought crossed my mind. I was right. A second later, Wang Xiaoming unbuckled his belt and squatted down right under my tree. As his face relaxed into a look of pure relief, a very specific, pungent odor drifted up toward me. Are you kidding me? I cursed silently. I shifted from laying flat to a crouch, tensing my muscles. I was going to jump down and scare the absolute life out of this idiot. Snap! The sound of a breaking branch echoed through the silent woods. Both Wang Xiaoming and I froze, snapping our heads toward the source of the noise. The darkness was absolute. There was nothing there. Did I hear that wrong? Wang Xiaoming muttered to himself. His voice was a whisper, but from my perch, I heard every word. One person might mishear a sound, but two? Not a chance. Wang Xiaoming relaxed, thinking he was alone, but I did the opposite. I went on high alert. I narrowed my eyes, scanning the forest floor, even as that lingering smell made my eyes water. Much better, Wang Xiaoming sighed, finally finishing his business. But as he stood up to buckle his pants, a shadow materialized behind him. A figure emerged from the dark, clutching a dagger that shimmered with a cold, lethal light. Behind you, I screamed. The sudden shout in the dead of night made Wang Xiaoming jump out of his skin. But it also rattled the assassin. They both looked up toward the sound of my voice at the same time. Thwack! The moment they looked up, I released an arrow. The assassin's pupils shrunk in terror as he scrambled backward, barely dodging the projectile. Su Ming, Wang Xiaoming gasped, recognizing me instantly. Then he spun around and stared at the person behind him. He Haitao. Wang Xiaoming looked back and forth, his head spinning. Why was I in a tree? When did he Haitao get behind him? He looked like he was having a crisis, wondering if he'd been blind this whole time. He was trying to kill you, I said, my voice cold as ice. A flash of murderous intent crossed my eyes. I finally knew why Wang Xiaoming had died in my previous life. I just didn't understand why he Haitao, a classmate, would do it. You were going to kill me? Wang Xiaoming asked, his voice trembling. It was hard for him to wrap his head around. We were all classmates. There was no grudge between them. Was a murder really necessary? But he knew I wouldn't lie to him. TSK, what a nuisance, he Haitao spat, looking up at the tree. I thought I could finish you off without anyone knowing. But then this trash had to ruin my plan. He let out a cruel, jagged laugh. Not that it changes the ending. I'll just kill one more loser today. He stared at the spot where I was hidden by the leaves. He couldn't see me clearly, but he knew exactly where I was. Why? Wang Xiaoming demanded, his hands shaking as he fumbled to finish buckling his belt. Why kill me? A common man gets into trouble because of his treasures, he Haitao sneered. Don't you understand that? Before the sentence even finished, he Haitao's silhouette vanished into the darkness. It was the signature skill of the assassin class, stealth. You coward. Come out and fight. Wang Xiaoming gripped his sword with both hands, stepping into a combat stance. He scanned the perimeter, sweat beading on his forehead. We were all level 1, but assassins were treacherous. One well-placed stab, and it was game over. Su Ming, get down here and get behind me. Wang Xiaoming yelled, still looking for the hidden threat. I won't let him hurt you. I felt a pang of genuine emotion. This guy didn't even know if he could survive himself, yet he was worried about me. He thought my trash class made me helpless. I'm the one protecting you today, I said. I dropped from the branch, landing lightly on the forest floor. As I stepped into the faint light, Wang Xiaoming's jaw hit the ground. Even the hidden He Haitao must have frozen in shock. Above my head, my level was visible, level 9. It was impossible. Was I on some kind of supernatural steroids? How could anyone level up that fast? Before they could process it, I waved my hand. Come forth, my warriors. Black swirling portals tore open the air. One by one, goblin skeleton warriors marched out of the void. Wang Xiaoming's eyes went wide, and he swallowed hard, his face pale with shock. 71 skeleton warriors stood before them. With a single thought, I commanded them to form 2 circles. The inner circle surrounded me and Wang Xiaoming, shields raised. The outer circle expanded, sealing off every possible exit for He Haitao. Hidden in the shadows, He Haitao was likely shaking. He had never seen anything like this. My level was terrifying enough, but this army? The trash necromancer class was supposed to be a joke. Now, it was his worst nightmare. I caught a whiff of something in the air and turned to the stunned Wang Xiaoming. Do you smell that? Something foul. Wang Xiaoming blinked, snapping out of his daze. He sniffed the air and nodded. Yeah, it smells sour and metallic. I looked toward a specific patch of shadows where a puddle was forming on the ground. I smirked. I had found him. He Haitao had literally wet himself in fear, breaking his own stealth. I was about to give the order to attack when a voice boomed from the direction of the camp. What's going on? Who's out there? It was Zhang Ming, the lead mentor. He was marching toward us with 2 other students in tow. Lucky you. I whispered toward He Haitao's position. A moment later, Zhang Ming arrived. At that exact second, He Haitao's stealth timer ran out, and he reappeared, shivering and pale, in front of everyone. What are you all doing out here? Zhang Ming barked. Then his eyes landed on me. Su Ming, you're still alive. Just passing through, I said casually. I had already deactivated my combat status and hidden my level. To Zhang Ming, I looked like the same weakling he'd dismissed earlier. Is that so? Zhang Ming sneered, his voice full of contempt. It's a miracle you've survived this long. He turned his gaze to Wang Xiaoming and He Haitao. And what about you two? I wasn't worried about He Haitao snitching. What he had been trying to do wasn't exactly something he'd want to explain to a mentor. If he talked too much, he'd be the one in trouble. He Haitao knew he was in deep trouble if he spoke up. Attacking a fellow student was a serious crime, and since neither Wang Xiaoming nor I had mentioned it yet, he wasn't about to dig his own grave. I couldn't hold it, He Haitao muttered, his head hanging so low it nearly touched his chest. He looked like he wanted to vanish into the dirt. The 2 students behind Zhang Ming couldn't contain themselves. They tried to stifle their laughter, but a few snickers escaped anyway. Quiet, Zhang Ming barked, though his face twisted with visible disgust. Don't let your guard down in this dungeon. And don't wander off again. He gave He Haitao a look of pure disbelief before turning back to the group. He spared me a final, dismissive glance, but didn't invite me to join them. I didn't care. I wasn't planning on staying. If my best friend hadn't been here, I would have disappeared into the trees long ago. As soon as Zhang Ming and his students vanished back toward the camp, I turned my gaze to He Haitao. My expression was cold. What are you doing? He Haitao stammered, stumbling backward. Don't touch me. If you try anything, I'll scream. Mentor Zhang isn't far. The arrogance was gone. All that was left was raw, naked terror. We had been in the dungeon for a little over a day. He was still level 1. I was level 9. To him, I was a freak of nature. He had seen my skeleton warriors. 1 or 2 he might have handled, but I summoned them in swarms. His elite talent felt like a joke compared to my trash class. What was the treasure you were talking about? I asked. Wang Xiaoming stepped forward. He pulled a ring off his finger and held up a strange, glowing stone. He means these. I looked at the items and felt a surge of genuine surprise. A storage ring? And an upgrade stone. I found a low-health boss earlier today and managed to land the killing blow, Wang Xiaoming explained, glancing bitterly at He Haitao. I didn't realize this rat was watching me from the shadows. Assassins really were the worst. Always creeping around, waiting to scavenge. A storage ring was valuable enough, but an upgrade stone was a different league. It allowed a user to level up instantly, though the success rate depended on your grade. On the open market, that stone alone would fetch tens of millions. People killed for less. Brother Su, Wang Xiaoming said, holding the items out to me. You saved my life. These are yours. He Haitao's jaw dropped. He looked like he thought Wang Xiaoming had lost his mind. Giving away a fortune just like that? I smiled faintly. My friend had incredible luck, but he also had a good head on his shoulders. He knew he couldn't protect these items on his own. I'll take the ring, I said, reaching out. But keep the stone for yourself. The ring would be useful for carrying supplies, but the stone was too much. Besides, I didn't need the experience. But it's a waste to use it now. Wang Xiaoming hesitated. I wanted to save it for a higher level to get the most value. Decide for yourself, I warned, glancing at He Haitao. But remember, people are already hunting you for it. I won't touch him. He Haitao shrieked, shaking his head frantically. Wang Xiaoming looked at the stone, then at the shadows around us. He made his choice. He crushed the stone. A pillar of light erupted around him, and a second later, he was level 2. His B-grade talent gave him an 80% success rate for early levels, and it had paid off. Congratulations, I said. He Haitao looked like he wanted to cry. Seeing that much money literally disappear into thin air clearly hurt him more than the threat of death. Suddenly, the bushes rustled. Asterisk swoosh. Swoosh, asterisk. We all froze. My pulse quickened. What was that? Wang Xiaoming asked, spinning around. Monsters, I said. I could see several dark shapes darting through the trees in the distance. Without a word, He Haitao vanished into stealth. He didn't even say goodbye. I have to warn the others, Wang Xiaoming shouted. He started running toward the camp, but stopped after a few steps. Brother Su, what are you doing? Come on. I shook my head. Go ahead. You'll be safer with them. I had no intention of joining Zhang Ming's group. I worked better alone, and I wasn't ready to show my full strength to the school yet. Once I hit level 10 and gained my first real survival skill, I'd be untouchable. Until then, I preferred the dark. Wang Xiaoming looked at me, remembered my level, and nodded. All right, just stay safe. He turned and sprinted toward the camp. I slipped the storage ring onto my finger. It was small, only about 5 cubic meters of space, but it was enough. I looked into the forest. The number of monsters was growing. I could see at least a dozen pairs of eyes glowing in the dark. Boom! An explosion rocked the air from the direction of the camp. The fight had started. Interesting, I whispered, a smirk playing on my lips. Come out, my warriors. I raised my hand, and the ground began to churn. It was time to hunt. 71. That was the size of my army. I didn't use any flashy moves or cool skills. I went with the simplest, most brutal method possible. I just pushed forward. I cut down a level 2 goblin. 10 experience points. I took down another. 10 more. The process was mechanical. Within minutes, I had cleared out all 13 monsters in my immediate vicinity. I didn't waste a second. As the bodies hit the ground, I focused on extracting their soul information to grow my ranks. My army jumped from 71 to 84. I only had 6 slots left before I hit my limit. Suddenly, shadows flickered all around me. Asterisk swoosh. 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 Asterisk. The movement was constant. I frowned, sensing something strange about the way these creatures were gathering. But I didn't care about their tactics. Kill them all, I commanded. My skeleton warriors lunged forward again. The sound of blades tearing through flesh filled the night. Asterisk Poochie. 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 Asterisk. Cold light flashed in the darkness, followed by sprays of blood and the pathetic screams of goblins. The notifications kept rolling in. 10 experience points. 10 more. In just 1 hour, I had slaughtered another 35 monsters. Finally, silence returned to the forest. I pulled up my attribute panel. My summons were at 90 out of 90. I needed to upgrade. I selected the level 1 goblin skeletons and hit delete. The count dropped to 65. I nodded, satisfied. Then, I began extracting the soul data from the level 2 goblins I'd just killed. Half an hour later, my army was back at full capacity. 90 warriors, but now every single one of them was level 2. Looking at the wall of bone and steel surrounding me, even I felt a chill. By now, the entire dungeon was in a state of total riot. Monsters were surging out from every corner. Every student group was forced into a desperate fight. The instructors finally realized the danger and began a frantic retreat toward the entrance. Nearby, a scream cut through the air. Poochie. His level, it's level 5, someone shrieked. Get back. Move. Is that a boss? I looked toward the commotion. A massive, muscular goblin stood over a group of students, wielding a heavy cleaver. He was hacking through them like they were paper. Their mentor was nowhere to be seen, likely already buried under a mountain of smaller goblins. A boss, I whispered. My eyes lit up. Finally, something better than a level 2. I didn't rush in to save them. I stood back, watching coldly as the student squad, nearly 10 people, was wiped out. Even their level 10 instructors couldn't handle the sheer volume of monsters while trying to protect dead weight. They had died from exhaustion and blood loss. The goblins noticed me. They stopped tearing at the corpses and turned in unison. Even the boss dropped a severed limb he'd been gnawing on. Roar! The boss let out a deafening cry, signaling his pack to attack. 20 goblins charged at me at once. You want to compare numbers? I chuckled. I think I have you beat. I waved my hand. Nearly 100 skeleton warriors erupted from the shadows behind me. The goblin boss actually froze, his eyes wide with shock. The two forces collided. Asterisk Poochie. Poochie, asterisk. It wasn't even a contest. My skeletons tore through the boss's subordinates in seconds. Before he could react, he was completely surrounded by a wall of white bone. The boss roared again, swinging his massive cleaver. My level 2 skeletons were fragile against that kind of strength. With every swing, several of my warriors shattered into dust. Asterisk thud. 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 Asterisk. Keep going, I muttered. I raised my bow and aimed for his eye. Shum. The arrow whistled through the air and buried itself deep into his right socket. Roar. The boss screamed in agony and rage. He went into a frenzy, hacking wildly to clear a path toward me. But for every skeleton he smashed, 2 more took its place. He couldn't move an inch. The stronger he fought, the more excited I got. He wasn't stupid. Realizing he couldn't reach me, the boss tried to break through the circle to escape. But I wasn't about to let my prize walk away. My skeletons formed a suffocating perimeter. He hacked and slashed, but it was useless. It was a war of attrition he couldn't win. His body was soon covered in deep gashes. As he neared death, the boss let out one last ear-shattering howl. His eyes turned blood red, and his muscles surged with power. He was berserking. His speed and strength doubled, and he instantly shattered half of my surrounding army. Interesting, I said, my heart racing. I flicked my wrist, summoning a fresh wave of warriors to fill the gaps. Against an endless tide of death, even a berserk boss has a limit. Finally, with one last groan, the giant collapsed into a pool of his own blood. You have successfully killed a level 5 goblin boss. Gained 500 experience points. Congratulations. You have received 5 points of strength as a bonus reward. The goblin boss has dropped. Heavy cleaver. I blinked. 5 points of strength? That was a massive windfall. That was equivalent to a full level up worth of attribute points for anyone else. I stepped forward and picked up the weapon. It was a refined heavy cleaver. Strength +8, Constitution +5. This thing was leagues better than the basic bow I was carrying. Poochie. I used the cleaver to split the boss's skull and pulled out a glowing magic crystal. A level 5 boss crystal was worth a fortune. After stashing the loot in my ring, it was time for the real prize. I knelt by the corpse and began extracting the soul information. This was what I had been waiting for. 1 minute passed. Extraction successful. A surge of triumph hit me. I couldn't wait. I reached out and activated the summon. A swirling black vortex opened on the ground, and something massive began to climb out. Would you like the summary of the next chapter? A skeleton warrior stepped out from the darkness. It was taller and more imposing than any of my previous summons. Its bones were smooth, barely showing a single crack, and 2 points of crimson light flickered in its hollow sockets. It gripped a massive heavy cleaver, radiating a pressure that made my regular goblin warriors look like toys. I checked its stats. Level 5 Goblin Boss Skeleton. Strength, 25. Agility, 8. Constitution, 12. It even had a skill called Berserk, which boosted all its attributes by 20% for a short time. I nodded, thoroughly satisfied. Boss-level monsters were on a different level. Not only were their base stats higher, but they actually kept their skills. Suddenly, a light flickered in the distance. Voices echoed through the trees. There's someone over there. Quick, check it out. A group of men in official uniforms burst into the clearing. I recognized them immediately, the authorities in charge of the novice dungeon. The leader, a middle-aged man, rushed toward me with a worried look. Young man, are you all right? He asked. I'm fine, I said, glancing at the pile of corpses around us. The leader followed my gaze and let out a long, heavy sigh. The dungeon has glitched. We didn't expect this many casualties. We've received orders to evacuate everyone immediately for safety. He gestured to two of his men, signaling them to escort me out. Just then, another scout ran up to him, sounding breathless. Captain, we found a boss-level monster nearby. It was killed just moments ago. The leader's face twisted in shock. A boss? What level? Level 5 goblin boss. The captain turned his eyes back to me. His gaze was sharp, trying to read me. Since I was hiding my level, he couldn't tell how strong I actually was, but he could tell I was just a student. Did you kill it? I knew there was no point in lying. I reached into my storage ring and pulled out the heavy cleaver the boss had dropped. I did. This fell from him. He looked at the cleaver, then at the ring on my finger. His expression said it all. Did that ring drop too? The ring was a gift, I explained quickly. When I found the boss, it was already on the verge of death. I just fired an arrow from the shadows to finish it off. Then you guys showed up. The captain looked at my bow, then at the arrow still protruding from the boss's eye socket. He didn't doubt me. Besides, a man in his position wouldn't dream of stealing loot from a student. It would be a disgrace. Fine, he said. Since you got the kill, the loot is yours. Now, let's get you out of here. I can find my own way out, I said. You should go help the others. I didn't want to leave yet. Even with the dungeon glitching, I wasn't in danger. I wanted to find more bosses, extract more souls, and farm more attribute points. The rewards were too good to pass up. No, the captain said firmly. We found you, so we are responsible for your safety. You're coming with us. I sighed. I couldn't exactly pick a fight with the government. All right, thank you. The two guards escorted me toward the exit. We ran into a few stray goblins along the way, but the guards moved like lightning, one-shotting everything before I could even lift my bow. When we reached the portal, they stepped aside. Go on, one of them said with a smile. We have to go back for the others. Thank you both, I said sincerely. I stood at the very edge of the exit, hesitating. I considered slipping back into the woods the moment they turned around. But when I looked back, they were still standing there, waving me off with friendly grins. Damn it, I cursed under my breath. I had no choice. I stepped through the portal. My vision blurred, and when I opened my eyes, I was back in the real world. The sun was just starting to rise. I looked back at the entrance, wondering if I could just sneak back in, but a gruff voice snapped me out of it. Hey kid, which academy are you from? Move it. Don't block the entrance. A burly man was shouting at me. I realized a crowd had already gathered outside. Jiangbei Academy, I replied, realizing my solo run was officially over. Jiangbei is over there. Move along. As I walked toward my school's designated area, I spotted a man in a sharp, expensive suit. He had a refined look, but a predatory, wicked smile played on his lips. My heart skipped a beat. Lu Shuwen. He was the vice president of the Tiger Sword Guild, nicknamed the Suited Thug. If someone of his caliber was here, it meant the authorities were taking this dungeon glitch extremely seriously. Hey, Brother Su, over here. I looked up and saw Wang Xiaoming waving at me. Most of the Jiangbei students had already made it out. I walked over, feeling the weight of several stares. You're actually alive? Mentor Zhang Ming blurted out. He looked genuinely stunned. His own team had lost 2 students despite his protection, and they only escaped because the Tiger Sword Guild intervened. He couldn't wrap his head around how I survived alone. I ignored him and turned to Wang Xiaoming. Where's that idiot Zhang Yongxing? I saw him get tagged by a monster earlier. Did he make it? He's already gone home, Wang Xiaoming whispered. As we talked, the crowd went silent. Yi Lingfei was walking out of the dungeon, accompanied by a middle-aged man. She headed straight for the Jiangbei section, her head held high. She wasn't hiding her stats anymore. She let her level display openly for everyone to see, and the numbers left the entire clearing in a state of absolute shock. Class, Elemental Mage. Level 4. Level 4. As expected of our Jiangbei Academy genius. Mentor Zhang Ming couldn't stop praising Yi Lingfei the moment he saw her stats. He wasn't the only one impressed. Reaching level 4 in such a short time was incredible. To everyone else, she was the fastest leveling student in the history of this dungeon. Of course, they didn't know about me. If I hadn't been there, she really would have been the undisputed star of the show. Mentor Zhang, I won't be returning to the academy with the group, Yi Lingfei said as she stopped in front of him. Her voice was ice cold. Of course, of course. Zhang Ming agreed instantly. He didn't dare say no. The middle-aged man standing behind her looked like he could take down 10 men of Zhang Ming's caliber without breaking a sweat. With a polite nod, Yi Lingfei turned and walked away. The crowd watched her go, their eyes filled with pure worship. Man, look at her. She thinks she's so big, Wang Xiaoming muttered, scowling. He leaned toward me, his voice rising with indignation. Brother Su, it's not fair. You're the one who... I didn't let him finish. I lunged forward and clamped my hand over his mouth, squeezing tight. What are you doing? I hissed. Are you trying to get me killed? Hey, what's going on over there? Zhang Ming snapped, glancing at us. Be serious. This isn't the time for games. I finally let go. Wang Xiaoming doubled over, gasping for air like a fish out of water. Brother Su, do you have a grudge against me? He wheezed. You almost choked me to death. Shut up and keep your mouth closed. I warned him with a glare. He waved me off, signaling he got the message, but I could tell he was still confused. He didn't understand why I was choosing to stay low-key when I had the perfect chance to show off. Suddenly, a loud, soulful ringtone blasted through the silent clearing. It was an old pop song about loving until death. A few students burst out laughing. Who's the romantic? Someone joked. That's some serious dedication to a ringtone. Then, Lu Shuwen pulled the phone from his suit pocket. The laughter died instantly. The silence was so heavy you could hear people stop breathing. These kids realized they had just mocked the suited thug, the vice president of the Tiger Sword Guild. In Jiangcheng, he was a powerhouse. He didn't need a reason to ruin your life. Hello. Lu Shuwen answered. As he listened, his calm expression shattered. He became tense, his eyes darting around with sudden anxiety. Whatever the person on the other end was saying, it was big. He started walking away quickly, still gripped by the conversation. I watched him go, my stomach churning. Things were changing. The dungeon glitch, Lu Shuwen's phone call, even saving Wang Xiaoming. None of this matched my memories of my previous life. I was heading into unknown territory now. Once Lu Shuwen was gone, the tension finally broke. Students continued to trickle out of the gate. Our mentors from Jiangbei were all there, except for Chao Gan, the man I had killed inside. Where's Chao Gan? Zhang Ming muttered, pacing back and forth. How deep did they go? Most of the other schools had already gathered their survivors and left. Only a few of us remained. Go home. A man with a gruff voice called out to the waiting mentors. There's no point in waiting anymore. The crowd gasped. The implication was clear. Anyone still inside was already dead. You must be mistaken, Zhang Ming said, stepping forward. He looked pale. We still have an entire team in there. Chao Gan is a professional. Our Manhwa Academy is missing a team, too, another teacher shouted. The gruff man turned his sharp, blade-like gaze on them. Do you really not understand the situation inside? Do you honestly think they could survive in there this long? No one answered. Deep down, everyone knew he was right. Back to the academy, Zhang Ming said, his voice hollow. We arrived back at the school half an hour later. Principal Gao Baisong was waiting for us, his face grim. He already knew the numbers. We had sent 52 people into that dungeon. Only 31 came back. We had lost nearly half our strength. It was the worst disaster in the history of Jiangbei Academy. Students, Gao Baisong began, his voice heavy with grief. This dungeon was an anomaly. I am relieved to see those of you who made it. Don't blame yourselves for what happened to your teammates. He sighed. Then his expression turned sharp and serious. 10 minutes ago, I received a phone call. This concerns all of you. The courtyard erupted in whispers. Everyone was leaning in, desperate to hear the news. A secret realm has appeared in Jiangcheng, the principal announced. And this year, your final exam will take place inside it. The crowd went wild. A secret realm? For us, that's a death sentence. We're just rookies. Secret realms were usually reserved for professional guilds. Sending students in there sounded like madness. Quiet, Gao Baisong shouted. I know you're afraid, but this realm is different. It has been tested by the authorities. There is a level cap. No one over level 10 can enter. I stood in the back, realizing this must have been what Lu Shuwen's phone call was about. Participation is voluntary, the principal continued. But listen closely. Any student who enters and makes it out alive will have their pick of any guild in Jiangcheng. You want into the top tier? Survive the realm, and you're in. Those who don't participate can simply repeat the school year. Alternatively, you could choose to seek out your own guild and undergo a custom assessment. Gao Baisong finished speaking and stood silently at the front. He scanned the crowd, his eyes searching for anyone with the courage to step forward. "Oh, one more thing," he added, his voice dropping slightly. "It is rumored that the water of life might appear inside this secret realm." My heart skipped a beat. The water of life was incredibly expensive and rare. Even if you had the money, you couldn't always find it. It was a legendary medicine with god-tier healing and recovery properties. If I could get my hands on it, my father, Su Chong, might actually have a chance to recover. I couldn't suppress the excitement bubbling up inside me. "I'll participate," I shouted. I was the first one to raise my hand and walk out from the crowd. The lure of the water of life was too strong to ignore. Besides, a secret realm like this was exactly what I needed. High risk meant high reward. With my current abilities, I was confident I could protect myself. I'd be a fool not to go. Everyone stared at me in total shock. Even Gao Baisong looked stunned. I was the guy with the trash class. Aside from Wang Xiaoming and Hua Haitao, the rest of the students looked at me like I had lost my mind. "Su Ming, you better think this through," Zhang Ming warned, stepping forward. "The danger in there is nothing like the dungeon today. If you die, don't blame the academy for not warning you." He wanted me to weigh my own strength before doing something reckless. "I'm sure," I said with a faint smile. My gaze was steady. "I'm participating." "He's a lunatic," someone whispered. "Does he have a death wish?" "Yeah. Does he still think he's some kind of genius?" Mocking laughter rippled through the crowd. A chubby kid leaned toward Hua Haitao and pointed at me. "Brother Tao, look at that loser," he sneered. "You haven't even said you're going, and he's already volunteering. Is he stupid, or what?" Hua Haitao's face went pale. He shoved the chubby kid away. "Get away from me," he hissed. "If you want to die, don't drag me down with you." Hua Haitao had seen what I could do in the dungeon. He didn't have words for it other than terrifying. "Brother Tao?" The kid stammered, trying to get close again. "Get lost," Hua Haitao roared. The outburst drew everyone's attention, including Gao Baisong's. The principal stared directly at Hua Haitao. He clearly wanted the boy to join. As an assassin, Hua Haitao had a much better chance of surviving. Even if he just stayed near the entrance and stayed invisible the whole time, he'd make it out. "Student Hua Haitao is participating too?" Gao Baisong said, not giving him a choice. "Excellent. Very brave." Hua Haitao stood there, completely frozen. He hadn't said a word about joining. The last thing he wanted was to be stuck in a realm with a freak like me. With his talent, he could join any guild he wanted without this exam. Hua Haitao started to explain, but Gao Baisong cut him off. "You're one of the stars of Jiangbei Academy," the principal said with a sharp smile. "Since you're willing, come on up. I'm sure Yiling Fei will be joining us as well." Hua Haitao looked like he wanted to curse the old man out loud. He had been backed into a corner. To save face, he walked up and stood next to me, his body trembling. I gave him a quick, sideways glance, and he broke out in a cold sweat. Two more students eventually stepped forward. Wang Xiaoming, knowing his limits, stayed in the crowd. "I'm proud of these 4 students," Gao Baisong announced. "In 2 days, you will represent our academy. During that time, we will assign mentors to help you level up and increase your survival chances." The principal was smiling now. He had been terrified that no one would volunteer, which would have made the academy a laughingstock. Now he had 4, and he hadn't even finished asking. "Class dismissed," he shouted. "Principal, you don't need to arrange a mentor for me," I said, stepping forward. Gao Baisong frowned. He clearly thought I was delusional. I had a weak class, I was heading into a death trap, and now I was refusing help. "Principal, I don't think it's necessary either," Zhang Ming interjected sarcastically. "This guy's escape skills are top-notch." "What do you mean?" Gao Baisong asked. Zhang Ming quickly whispered the story of what happened in the dungeon. As he spoke, the principal's expression shifted. He stopped looking at me with pity and started looking at me with genuine curiosity. He knew a trash class shouldn't have been able to survive that mutated dungeon alone. "I accept your request," Gao Baisong said, nodding seriously. "Thank you, Principal," I replied. I turned around and walked away without another word. "Principal, letting him go is just sending him to his death," Zhang Ming scoffed as he watched me leave. Luck only lasts so long. It doesn't matter, Gao Baisong replied. If he survived that dungeon, he can survive the realm. He's hiding something. Zhang Ming turned back to the students and noticed Hua Haitao was drenched in sweat. Are you okay? Is it too hot out here? Yeah, really hot, Hua Haitao stammered, wiping his forehead with his sleeve. Zhang Ming looked him up and down, his eyes lingering on the boy's shaking legs. He let out a judgmental grunt, and Hua Haitao, dying of embarrassment, sprinted away from the scene. I didn't go straight home after leaving the academy. Instead, I headed to the treasure pavilion. It was a massive, national chain that bought and sold monster loot. Welcome. A young woman greeted me as I walked through the doors. She was dressed in a professional skirt and had a bright, practiced smile. I'd like to sell some things, I told her. Right this way, she said, leading me to a private seating area. Please, have a seat. What exactly are you looking to sell today? The waitress returned quickly with a steaming cup of tea. I took it from her and offered a polite nod of thanks. She sat down across from me, her professional smile never wavering. She explained that the treasure pavilion bought all kinds of monster essences and equipment, promising me a fair price. I didn't feel like making small talk. I told her I wanted to sell some essences, and as I spoke, I emptied my storage ring. The table was suddenly covered in glowing orbs. There were 25 level 1 essences and a staggering 113 level 2 essences. The waitress froze. Her eyes widened as she stared at the pile, then back at me. I could tell what she was thinking. I looked like a typical student who had just awakened his class. Most kids my age struggled to bring in 2 or 3 essences, but I had just dumped a small mountain of them in front of her. Did you hunt all of these yourself? She asked, her voice trembling slightly with curiosity. I nodded simply. I asked her to run the numbers and tell me what the total was. She swallowed hard, and I noticed the way she looked at me changed instantly. The pity was gone, replaced by a sudden, sharp respect. She started calculating. Level 1 essences went for 200 yuan each, and level 2s were 500. The total came to 61,500 yuan. Wait, I said, remembering the prize from the dungeon boss. I have a level 5 one too. I reached back into my storage ring and pulled out the glowing core of the Goblin King. I set it on the table. The waitress gasped, her jaw nearly dropping. She looked at me as if she wanted to ask if I'd killed the boss myself, but I just scratched my head and gave her a sheepish grin. I told her it was just luck. She cleared her throat, trying to regain her composure. She offered me 20,000 yuan for the boss essence. It was a fair price, right around what I expected. The grand total hit 81,500 yuan. I signed the paperwork without hesitation, and she hurried off to process the payment. 5 minutes later, my phone buzzed. I looked down at the message. My bank account balance had jumped from basically nothing to over 81,000 yuan. A faint smile crept onto my face. For the first time in 2 lives, I wasn't broke. The waitress returned, her professional mask back in place. She asked if there was anything else I needed. I told her I wanted to buy a weapon. Even though I had a machete in my ring, I knew my body was too fragile for close-quarters combat. I needed to stay at a distance. What kind of weapon are you looking for? She asked. I hesitated for a second, then told her I wanted a bow. She seemed surprised, probably because I didn't look like a typical archer, but she led me to the weapon gallery anyway. The bow section was quiet and empty, a stark contrast to the crowded areas filled with swords and staves. I walked past the display cases, scanning the stats. A refined bow gave 5 points of agility for 10,000 yuan. A rare bow gave 15 agility for 50,000. I shook my head, they were trash. I saw a Kylan bow for 100,000 yuan that shot fire arrows, but it was too expensive. Then, my eyes landed on a simple-looking weapon called the Void Bow. It provided 5 agility, but the special effect caught my eye. The string is the arrow. It cost 80,000 yuan. The waitress noticed me lingering. She asked if I wanted to try it out. I was a bit shocked. In my past life, I was too poor to even step foot in a place like this, let alone get a private demo. She smiled sweetly, unlocked the case, and led me to a reinforced testing range. She handed me the bow. It felt light, perfectly balanced. I stepped up to the line and looked at the targets. I whispered the name of the effect to myself. The waitress explained that I didn't need physical arrows. The bow created its own projectiles from energy. I didn't waste any more time. I pulled the string back and let fly. 3 golden streaks of light hissed through the air in a single second. 3 loud cracks followed as the arrows slammed into the targets, shattering them into splinters. My heart raced. This bow was incredible. It was leagues better than the basic gear I'd been using, and never having to worry about ammo was a game changer. I turned to her, grinning, and told her I'd take it. But when I looked at her, she was staring at me with a look of pure disbelief. I had to wave my bank card in front of her face to snap her out of it. She stammered an apology, took my card, and practically ran out of the room. Outside the door, she leaned against the wall and took a deep breath. She had seen my stats during the test. Her mind was reeling. A level 9 student? A necromancer using a bow? It went against everything she knew about classes. To her, I was a walking contradiction. A few moments later, she came back and handed me my card. The transaction was complete. The void bow was mine. Thanks, I said, reaching out to take my bank card back from her. I tucked the void bow into my storage space and gave the waitress a quick nod, turning to head for the exit. I'd spent enough time here. But I hadn't gone more than a few steps before her voice cut through the quiet showroom, sounding urgent. Sir, wait. I stopped and looked back, feeling a bit confused. The bill was paid, and I had the goods. What else could there be? Is there a problem? I asked. She hurried over, catching her breath as she stopped in front of me. Without a word, she held out a small, pink business card with both hands. This is my personal card. If you ever need anything in the future, please contact me directly. I stared at the card, a bit stunned. I knew how the Baibao Pavilion worked. They only gave out personal contact info to the rich, the powerful, or the elite. I never thought I'd be one of them. I took the card and looked at the 3 cute characters printed on it, Linanchi. It was clearly a custom design. Linanchi, I muttered. That's me, she said with a warm smile. I look forward to our future cooperation. I nodded, still processing it. Under her personal escort, I walked out of the Baibao Pavilion and back onto the streets. The sun was starting to dip below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. I pulled out my phone to check my balance. 1,500.50 yuan. I let out a long sigh. Money really doesn't last, does it? I'd started with a fortune and ended up with pocket change. I stopped by a supermarket on the way home and loaded up on meat and fish. It was time my family had a decent meal for once. As I walked toward my apartment, carrying heavy bags in both hands, I felt a genuine sense of peace. Things were finally looking up. I was even starting to get excited about seeing my father's face when he realized I'd hit level 9. But as I turned into the dim alleyway that served as a shortcut to my building, the mood shifted. Yo, look who it is, a voice sneered from the shadows. Isn't that the kid Zhang Xiao told us to deal with? Yeah, that's him. Talk about luck. Zhang Xiao's gonna be thrilled when he hears we caught him again. A few figures stepped out, blocking my path. My eyes narrowed. I recognized them instantly. These were the same thugs who had cornered me with Shun Yao before. They had even chased me to my front door. If my father, Su Chang, hadn't forced his broken body to stand up for me back then, I probably would have ended up in a hospital bed. I didn't feel fear. I felt a cold, sharp spark of anticipation. I wasn't even looking for you guys, and yet here you are, walking straight into the fire. A dark, crooked smile touched my lips. I didn't slow down. I kept walking toward them, bags of groceries swinging at my sides. Look at this coward, one of them laughed. He's not even running this time. He's coming right to us. Wait, be careful, another warned, standing up straight. He was fast last time. We only lost him because we were careless. Don't let him slip away again. They lined up, shoulder to shoulder, completely blocking the narrow alley. I didn't stop. As I got within a few feet of them, I felt a familiar pull in my mind. Behind them, a swirl of black mist tore open the air. A dark portal manifested silently. From the void stepped a towering figure gripping a massive cleaver, the skeleton warrior, the transformed goblin boss. One of the thugs heard something. He turned around, his eyes widening until they looked like they might pop out of his skull. He tried to speak, but the words died in his throat. He started frantically hitting the shoulder of the guy next to him. What? Stop it. You're annoying, the leader snapped, shaking him off. The kid is right there. Squelch. The sound of steel sliding through meat and bone cut him off. Thud, thud, thud. Something round and heavy hit the pavement. Suddenly, it started to rain. But the droplets weren't cold. They were warm, thick, sticky. "What is this?" someone hissed, wiping his face. He looked at his hand in the dim light and froze. They all froze. Slash, slash, slash. The skeleton warrior was a machine of pure efficiency. It felt no mercy. It didn't give them a chance to scream. Cold flashes of steel danced in the dark, and within seconds, the alley was silent again. They were all down, cooling in a pool of their own making. I stood there, my expression cold and indifferent. As I walked past the bodies, I gave my hand a slight wave, storing them all into my void space. "Dismissed," I whispered. The skeleton warrior dissolved back into the shadows. Aside from the dark stains on the ground, it was as if nothing had happened at all. I reached my front door and turned the key. Inside, the flickering light of the TV filled the living room. "Official reports confirm an anomaly in the Jiangxing Goblin Novice Dungeon today," the news anchor was saying. "Casualties are high, mostly among students." In other news, a special secret realm has appeared in the city. Due to its level restrictions, officials have decided to turn this realm into the final exam for all local academies. Guilds may also send qualified teams. Stay tuned for further updates. I didn't expect the media to move that fast. "The dungeon you went to, it had problems?" My father, Su Chong, was sitting on the sofa. He didn't look up, but his voice was heavy. "Yeah," I said, setting the groceries down. "The monsters jumped to level 2. There were way more of them than there should have been." I didn't lie. I told him exactly what happened inside. Su Chong stared at the TV, his face a mask of stone. "So many dead. You're lucky to be back. Your mother must be watching over you." He clicked the remote, flipping through channels. "I saw the news about the secret realm being the exam. It's voluntary, right? You don't need to go. I'll talk to old Hay. He can find you a spot in a guild where you can just blend in and stay safe." He still wasn't looking at me. He was just talking at me, deciding my life for me. "I already signed up," I said quietly. "We head out in 2 days." The remote hit me square in the chest. Su Chong stood up, his face flushed red, the veins in his neck bulging with sudden, violent rage. I stumbled back, shocked by the outburst. "Cancel it. Now," he roared. "Do you have any idea what a secret realm is? You think you can just walk in there?" I had never seen him this angry. But I didn't flinch. "There's life water in that realm," I said, my voice steady. "I have to go. I'm going to get it for you." Su Chong froze when he heard life water. For a second, his anger wavered, replaced by a bitter, hollow laugh. "Ha, you think you can go after life water? With what?" I didn't want to show him like this. I wanted it to be a surprise, a moment of pride. But there was no other way to make him understand. "With this," I said. I stopped suppressing my aura. I let the system interface bleed into reality, projecting my stats directly in front of his eyes. Class, Necromancer. Level 9. Su Chong went dead silent. He rubbed his eyes, leaning forward, his breath catching in his throat as he tried to process the impossible numbers hovering in the air. He stared at the interface, his eyes darting back and forth as if he thought his vision was failing him. Level 9. It was confirmed. I had only awakened my class 2 days ago. In this world, reaching level 9 in 48 hours was something only the massive, elite factions could pull off with unlimited resources. For a kid from a normal family, it was impossible. But there it was, glowing in the dim light of our living room. "How?" Su Chong's voice trembled. "How did you do this?" He looked at me with a mix of shock and pure bewilderment. He needed answers. He needed to know how his son had broken the laws of reality. "It's a long story," I said, my voice firm. "I'm showing you this because I have the strength to enter that secret realm. Don't try to stop me again." My gaze didn't waver. I was going, no matter what. I swiped the interface away, hiding my stats again. I picked up the grocery bags and walked into the kitchen, leaving him standing there in stunned silence. Su Chong didn't move for a long time. The trash class everyone mocked had hit level 9 in 2 days. If this news got out, Jiangxing would explode. No, the entire country would be in an uproar. I heard him stumble toward the kitchen. He looked frantic. "Does anyone else know about this?" he whispered urgently. "Until you can truly protect yourself, the fewer people who know, the better." "I know," I replied without looking back, focused on unpacking the ingredients. "Maybe you still shouldn't go," he muttered after a long pause. Forget the life water. It's not worth it. He was worried. The secret realm was under a massive spotlight. If someone powerful noticed my progress, I'd have a target on my back. I already told you, I said, my tone turning sharp. I'm getting that life water. Period. Suchong's face fell. If I were weak, he could just forbid me from going to keep me safe. But now he realized I had discovered a secret to this useless class. I was rising, and that path was paved with blood and danger. He looked at me with a sudden, deep guilt. He knew I was doing all of this for him. To fix his broken body. You, Dad, I interrupted, turning to face him. Don't say it. You can hit me or yell at me, but I'm not changing my mind. To end the argument, I snapped my fingers. Dark, swirling vortices tore open in the air around us. Suchong gasped, backing into the counter. When the pale, bony head of a skeleton warrior emerged from a black hole, his eyes nearly popped out of his head. Retract, I whispered. Space was too tight to bring them all out, so I closed the portals instantly. What was that? He was shaking now, caught between terror and excitement. My summons, I said simply. I went back to the stove. Suchong swallowed hard. Everything he thought he knew about my class had been shattered. He walked back to the sofa and sat down, staring at nothing. Then, he started to laugh, a soft, silly sound. Tears gathered in the corners of his eyes. For the first time in years, he acted like a father. He spent the rest of the night coaching me, giving me tips on how to handle the secret realm. But whenever I asked about the last time that specific realm opened, he shut down. He'd go silent or change the subject immediately. He was hiding something big. You're not qualified to know yet, he finally said. I clenched my fists. Fine. If I wasn't qualified, I'd make myself qualified. I needed more power. Late that night, I sat in my room, watching the clock. 23 hours, 59 minutes, and 58 seconds. 23 hours, 59 minutes, and 59 seconds. Midnight. System, I whispered. Extract experience. Extraction successful. Gained 86,400 experience points. I nearly jumped off my bed. I pulled up my status window and looked at the level bar. Level 9. EXP 119,548/3,500. Level up, I commanded. My heart hammered against my ribs. In this world, reaching level 10 was a milestone. It was when you unlocked your first true class skill. But there were no records for necromancer skills. I was flying blind. A pillar of light erupted from my body, washing the room in a white glow. Level up. Current level, 10. EXP, 84,548/4,000. I held my breath, staring at the screen. New skill acquired, Death's Curse. The name sounded promising. I tapped for details. Death's Curse, level 1 when cast on an ally, increases all attributes by 5%. When cast on an enemy, reduces all attributes by 5%. I blinked. It was a dual-purpose buff and debuff. For a summoner like me, this was god tier. I started laughing. A 5% swing at level 1 was already incredible. Upgraded, I said. I had points to burn. Upgrading to level 2 cost 20,000 experience. A bit steep, but I didn't care. Upgrade successful. Death's Curse level 2. The buff and debuff jumped to 10%. I didn't stop. I couldn't level up past 10 if I wanted to enter the novice exam, so all my extra experience was going into my skills. Upgrade Death's Curse to level 3. Cost 50,000 experience. Confirm. In the blink of an eye, 70,000 points were gone. I was down to my last few thousand, but my skill was now at level 3. I felt a surge of raw confidence. Then, a new notification blinked on the Super System interface. Congratulations. Host has reached level 10. The system is currently in the basic stage. Spend 10,000 points to upgrade to the intermediate stage? I stared at the text, my mind racing. The real game was just beginning. I couldn't help but gasp. Reaching level 10 had already brought me so many surprises, but the cost of the next system upgrade was staggering. Even so, I couldn't suppress the excitement bubbling up in my chest. I started laughing like a madman. I threw my arms out and collapsed onto the bed, staring up at the ceiling. My pupils were shaking. After I finally calmed my racing heart, I closed the Super System interface and pulled up my personal character panel. Name, Su Ming. Class, Necromancer, Unique. Level, 10. Experience, 44,548/4000. Strength, 15. Agility, 46. Spirit, 10. Constitution, 10. Summons, 91. 89 Level 2 Skeleton Warriors, 1 Level 5 Skeleton Warrior. Skill, Death's Curse, Level 3. Talent, S grade. Remaining stat points, 24. The corners of my mouth curled into a smirk. I wanted to see what my new skill could do. Death's Curse, I whispered. A pillar of black light erupted around me. It was gone in a flash, but I felt an immediate, powerful surge through my entire body. I grabbed my phone and tapped the timer. I waited. 1 minute. 2 minutes. Finally, at 2 minutes and 56 seconds, the feeling of power faded. Accounting for the time it took to grab my phone, the duration was exactly 3 minutes. The best part? The drain on my mental energy and stamina was incredibly low. At my current level, I could cast this dozens of times in a row without breaking a sweat. Since the buff didn't depend on my spirit stat, I knew exactly what to do with my extra points. All in on agility, I muttered. Survival was the only thing that mattered. I dumped all 24 points into agility, bringing it to a staggering 70. Usually, only specialized classes like archers focused on agility, and even they balanced it with other stats. Someone like me, who poured everything into speed, was unheard of. Unless someone was a dedicated speed build at level 20, they wouldn't even be able to touch my shadow. I was a pure rat build, and I loved it. With my stats settled, I fell into a deep sleep. 2 days passed in the blink of an eye. It was finally the morning of the big exam. I hadn't bothered with the novice dungeons during those 2 days. The monsters there were beneath me now, and I didn't want to risk missing the exam by getting stuck in a regular dungeon. I chose to stay home and rot. Even while lying in bed, my system was working. I was gaining 86,400 experience points every single day just for existing. Over 2 days, I collected 172,800 points. Combined with my previous balance, I was sitting on a mountain of 217,348 experience points. The alarm clock blared in my ear. I fumbled for it, grabbed the plastic casing, and slammed the button down. I sat up slowly, my eyes still squeezed shut. I let out a long yawn and forced my blurry eyes open. I was so tired. I rubbed my face, ready to head to school, but then I stopped. I had one more thing to do. I pulled up the interface again. Upgrade Death's Curse, I commanded. Cost, 100,000 experience. Confirm? Confirm. Upgrade successful. Death's Curse level 4. The buff and debuff strength jumped to 20%. My remaining 117,348 points weren't enough to hit level 5, so I decided to save them. I hopped out of bed and went to wash up. It was time to head to the school assembly. When I walked into the living room, I was surprised to see Su Chong already sitting there. He had actually made breakfast. Eat up, he said, giving me a strained, awkward smile. Today is the day of the Secret Realm exam. I felt a wave of secondhand embarrassment. The way he was acting made this feel like a condemned man's last meal. By the way, Su Chong added while I was eating, Uncle Hay knows today is your big day. He insisted on driving you to the academy. No need, I said, waving him off. I can go by myself. To me, today was just another day. A knock sounded at the door before I could finish my sentence. That must be him, Su Chong said, stumbling as he hurried to the door. The door swung open to reveal a massive man. He was nearly 6'3", with dark skin and a thick, honest smile. This was Uncle Hay. Xiaoming, I heard the big exam is today. Uncle Hay boomed, walking in and giving me a playful wink. Your dad isn't in any shape to drive, so your Uncle Hay is taking you. I forced a small, polite smile onto my face. I guess I didn't have a choice.